Okay, everyone. So, welcome to the Reboot Money Conference. We're still waiting for a few people, but we'll start anyway. Thank you very much. So, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's made this event possible. The people who registered, the speakers, and also our co-organizers, which are the CARE and Etica. And also special thanks to the CARE for the sponsorship for financial support. Okay, so I want to start. This is about financial inclusion. I want to start to provide a quick context here, because financial inclusion is a kind of euphemism. In reality, this is about poverty. Okay, so basically, if people don't have a bank account, it's not because they don't have access to banking, it's typically because they don't have money. And so giving them some kind of state-of-the-art mobile payment solution, well, it's maybe not enough. Giving them a Bitcoin wallet is maybe not enough. So, of course, there is some poverty even in rich countries, but as we all know, the problem is in the global south and it's in the developing countries. That's where the problem is greatest. And some of us may think that we're doing what we can. There is, after all, development aid. And this is just some statistics from a few years back. You can say that in the year 2012, $2 trillion have flown from rich to poor countries. That includes about $130 billion in development aid. It looks very impressive. Except that $5 trillion flowed from the poor countries to the rich countries. Okay? And that's a report from Global Financial Integrity from 2016. If we now look at a longer time horizon, 1980 to 2012, which is the data that I have, we have a 26.5 trillion net flow from the poor to the rich. That is the reality. And most of this of course, some of this is interest payment, but in reality, most of it is capital flight and tax evasion. Okay? And so, it's a large number. This is a lot of money, okay, for the poor countries. So, what we see that we remain rich, partly because we are financed by the poor. Okay? That is, in fact, it's not vice versa. It's not we are giving them money, it's they giving us money. And of course, the underlying cause of all of this, the underlying cause of global poverty is, I would say, the fundamental unfairness of the global economic system, right? And that system, okay, it's governed by the Western world. Okay, it's governed in Washington, in Geneva, in Basel. It's governed in the capitals of the Western world. So, yes, we do need to work on financial inclusion. We do need to go to the poor countries and try and help them. But let's not forget that there is another fight to be fought. Let's not forget the real causes of global poverty. And that's my message as a starter for this conference. Thank you. Next, we will have... So this is no Q&A. Next will be SOS Fund, which this speech will be, I think, on microfinance. There we go. Sorry, just an announcement. So Marine Lefebvre, who was supposed to speak today, couldn't come. Her daughter is in hospital, unfortunately. So Alexandre Mortelet, who works with her, is going to present.
Alors bonjour à tous, je vais intervenir en français, malheureusement pour ceux qui ne parlent pas le français. Si vous ne me comprenez pas ou si vous avez des petites remarques, n'hésitez pas à me faire un petit coucou, j'essaierai de me prendre en considération. Donc, comme dit précédemment, je représente ici SOS Fin. C'est une ONG luxembourgeoise créée en 1993. Donc, on œuvre pour la souveraineté alimentaire contre la faim dans le monde, 2 volets, au nord, au sud. Au sud, évidemment pour le développement des agricultures familiales, et au nord, c'est des questions d'information, de sensibilisation, de plaidoyer. Moi, je suis assistant à l'information et au plaidoyer avec Marine, donc c'est des sujets plutôt politiques. Donc, je m'excuse en son nom, elle n'a pas pu venir aujourd'hui, comme vous pouvez le savoir, pour les raisons qu'on vient d'évoquer. Sinon, moi, je bosse pour SOS Fin depuis quelques mois déjà. J'ai mis un pied dans le monde des ONG depuis plusieurs mois aussi. Et en parallèle, je suis étudiant à l'Université de Luxembourg en gouvernance européenne. Je pense qu'il y a certaines personnes de l'université ici présentes. Et donc, on va parler de la microfinance. Donc, c'est un tableau que je vais dresser qui n'est pas très flatteur. Mais on va voir ensemble qu'il y a des possibilités pour sortir un peu de ce côté pas très flatteur de la microfinance. C'est un regard, bien évidemment, de la société civile. Moi, je travaille pour une organisation non gouvernementale ici au Luxembourg. Donc, c'est un regard qui est propre à ce milieu-là. Alors, on va commencer par quelques chiffres, des chiffres qui parlent sans doute à tout le monde, même ceux qui ne comprennent pas le français. 2,2 milliards de personnes dites pauvres dans le monde, et encore la définition du mot pauvre, de la catégorisation des gens dans la classe pauvre est sujet de discussion. 1,8 milliard de personnes qui vivent avec l'équivalent de 1,25 $ ou moins par jour. Un chiffre encore peut-être plus alarmant pour mettre en lumière justement les différences entre les plus riches et les moins riches. 85 humains les plus aisés possèdent autant de richesses que les 3,5 milliards les plus pauvres. Donc c'est quasiment la moitié de l'humanité. Et donc un chiffre qui nous concerne ici directement à SOS Faim, plus de 120 millions de personnes souffrent de la faim au quotidien. Il y a d'autres estimations qui prévoient même des chiffres allant jusqu'à 1 milliard de personnes qui souffrent de la faim au quotidien dans le monde, selon des estimations de la World Bank par exemple. Donc, à ces problèmes, on avait, semble-t-il, trouvé une solution. Beaucoup s'accordaient à dire que la solution, c'était la microfinance, des outils de microfinance comme le microcrédit et autres. Microfinance, en plus, ça rime avec espérance. Donc, ça a été avancé par beaucoup d'économistes et ensuite repris par certains politiques comme une solution viable. Donc, ça a commencé très tôt. Il y a eu des premières apparitions dans les années 40, mais notamment en 1970 au Bangladesh avec l'apparition du microcrédit, là où on a commencé vraiment à développer ces outils de microfinance. Donc, pour fournir aux pauvres, aux personnes pauvres, des moyens de créer leur gagne-pain et les outils pour gérer les risques associés. Et en 2000, vous pouvez voir ici, elle est promue par le prix Nobel de la paix Mohamed Yunus, au début des années 2000, comme une solution contre la pauvreté. Aujourd'hui, donc plus de 20 ans après, la microfinance, elle touche 140 millions d'emprunteurs à travers le monde. Parmi ces 140 millions de personnes, 80% sont des femmes, 65% sont des ruraux. Donc la croissance, elle est moindre, une croissance moyenne annuelle de 7% depuis 2012, comparée aux presque 20% dans les années 2000. Mais les outils de microfinance sont encore largement utilisés, donc on voit même si la croissance est plus faible, elle est quand même là. Et parfois, ce sont même les seuls outils financiers disponibles pour les populations dites isolées ou enclavées. Et nous, notre expérience de terrain d'ONG, elle nous permet de nuancer un peu les bienfaits qu'on avait mis en évidence à l'apparition de ces outils de microfinance. Donc on nuance un petit peu ça et son influence justement directe sur l'éradication de la pauvreté. Donc c'est ce qu'on va voir maintenant. La microfinance, en fait, elle coûte très cher aux pauvres. Donc, if there is one thing you need to keep in mind, if you don't speak French here from my presentation, that with this 25%, that's the interest rate of microcredit. It's an average, sometimes 20%, sometimes 30%. There's not only one thing you need to keep from my presentation, but that is very important. That's what I'm saying. But I'll go in French. Donc voilà, 25%, c'est le taux d'intérêt moyen pour le microcrédit. C'est un taux extrêmement important. C'est quelque chose qui coûte très cher, évidemment. Donc c'est des solutions à très court terme, voire très court terme. Donc on parle de jours, de semaines, voire de mois, mais on ne peut pas parler de solutions viables pour des années. Donc les taux sont exorbitants et sont la conséquence directe d'un enclavement fort et aussi, il faut le dire, d'un manque de concurrence. D'où l'importance cruciale des ONG, je suis quand même un petit peu là pour prêcher ma paroisse, en matière de microfinance avec la mise en disposition de fonds de garantie, donc ça je vais illustrer un peu plus tard, pour assurer un refinancement des institutions de microfinancement, avec un objectif clair, un objectif simple, qui est la baisse des taux d'intérêt. Un dogme qui a été remis en cause par la crise de surendettement des années 2000, donc, qui est intervenue après la crise financière, fin des années 2000. Une petite aparté illustrative ici pour le surendettement dans les pays du Sud. Donc si je parle de l'Afrique, il y avait en 2018 8 pays qui étaient classifiés, qui étaient dits surendettés. Donc selon le FMI, 8 pays dits surendettés, il y en avait 8 autres. Donc, dans tous 16 pays, il y en avait 8 autres qui étaient dits à haut risque, qui allaient tomber dans le surendettement les prochains mois, les prochaines années qui allaient venir. Donc, ça fait, sur ces pays d'Afrique, ça fait 16 pays qui sont sujets, directement ou indirectement, au surendettement. Donc, ça implique une remise en cause, donc on va soulever des questions, des remises en cause, avant tout des pratiques. Donc, on parle beaucoup de l'accès, justement, à la microfinance, aux outils de microfinance, mais on ne parle pas assez de leur impact. Donc, ici, on parle de l'incidence sur la vie des gens, les incidences directes ou indirectes, la remise en cause des cibles, parce qu'on a vu tout à l'heure, j'ai donné le chiffre de 65% de cibles rurales. Le financement rural, il est moins rentable que le financement urbain et il est petit à petit délaissé au profit de l'entrepreneuriat urbain. Donc les chiffres s'accordent à dire que justement il y a une tendance à la baisse pour la cible rurale de ces outils de microfinance. Bien sûr, les cibles urbaines elles sont plus accessibles, elles sont plus facilement accessibles. C'est peut-être plus facile justement d'accéder à ces cibles que les cibles dites rurales. Il y a aussi une remise en cause qu'on appelle ici sous-bassement idéologique. Donc une question importante se pose, faut-il attendre de toutes les populations dites pauvres qu'elles se dirigent justement vers l'entrepreneuriat? Est-ce que ça c'est la seule porte de sortie pour les catégories de personnes dites pauvres? Est-ce que c'est la seule possibilité, la seule solution, la seule porte de sortie à la précarité, à la pauvreté? Ça, c'est une question fondamentale qu'on se pose, nous, en tant que JPO. Et c'est important de savoir y répondre de plusieurs manières. Donc, la microfinance, elle a beaucoup évolué, elle s'est transformée. On a vu l'apparition de risques avec cette transformation. Donc, il y a une transformation sémantique. C'est un peu ici le thème de la conférence d'aujourd'hui, on parle plutôt d'inclusion financière. Ce n'est pas un terme pour se substituer à la microfinance, mais maintenant on va plutôt parler d'inclusion financière. C'est un terme qui est peut-être un peu plus positif, avec une stratégie basée sur 2 axes, restaurer la confiance dans le secteur, gagner un peu aussi en légitimité, attirer les banques centrales, parce que c'est l'objectif aussi principal, c'est d'attirer les banques, c'est d'avoir aussi des liquidités disponibles. À cela s'ajoute la prépondérance du domaine technologique. On parle ici au Luxembourg, au Grand-Duché du Luxembourg, énormément de l'importance de la digitalisation, mais c'est le cas aussi dans les pays du Sud et dans le domaine de la microfinance. On a ici une transformation dite technologique avec une liste bien sûr non exhaustive, l'arrivée des fintech et des acteurs de mobile banking. Et là, on constate on constate que ces outils qui sont avancés comme facilitant l'accès à des services financiers dans les territoires enclavés ou isolés, on constate malheureusement que l'arrivée de ces nouvelles arrivées dans le domaine de la microfinance, elle comporte des risques. C'est aussi l'avis de l'Institut de recherche pour le développement qui alerte sur les risques liés à l'impact de ces nouvelles arrivées. Donc, on parlait tout à l'heure de l'accès, et là on parle maintenant de l'impact, donc des conséquences directes pour les populations concernées. Donc les risques, c'est aussi là une liste non exhaustive, la perte de sens de l'inclusion financière. Donc ici, la technologie, elle permet d'enrôler les gens sans interaction directe, sans contact, sans relation individualisée. Il n'y a pas d'identification des besoins clairs, et dans ce contexte de digitalisation, donc les IMF restent primordiaux. Leur rôle de proximité, justement, est très important. Promesse de réduction des coûts pour les clients, elle est encore illusoire, elle n'a pas encore pu être prouvée. Il y a aussi une sorte de contradiction parce que des services de base sont encore inaccessibles, alors que certaines personnes dans les pays du Sud, dites pauvres, ont accès à des moyens de financement modernes. Donc elles sont fichées dans certains fichiers des banques en ligne, mais elles n'ont pas accès à l'eau, à des services d'éducation ou de sécurité. Donc là, on a une contradiction quand même notoire. Des problèmes de disponibilité de ressources naturelles aussi pour la production de ces outils dits technologiques, il faut le rappeler, et un impact environnemental insoutenable. Donc ça, c'est un peu la vision de Marine que je partage en partie ici. Et un exemple tout simple, on utilise tous le courrier électronique. Un email, par exemple, c'est 19 grammes de CO2. L'empreinte carbone d'un email, c'est 19 grammes de CO2. Si on ajoute des bénéficiaires à cet email, si on ajoute une pièce jointe, on peut multiplier par 10, voire par 20 l'impact carbone d'un simple email. Alors c'est vrai que j'ai un peu tapé sur la microfinance, là c'est quelques minutes. J'ai un peu dressé un tableau assez noir de la microfinance et des outils de microfinance. Mais nous, on y croit quand même. Ici, à SOS1, on a même mis en place un projet. Donc, je vous le dis, je suis ici un peu pour prêcher ma paroisse. On y croit quand même, mais on a mis en place un projet. Donc, c'est ce projet AgriPlus. Donc, SOS1 a obtenu un mandat de 7 ans du ministère des Affaires étrangères européennes pour un projet de financement de l'agriculture. Donc là, on va voir qu'il n'y a pas seulement un volet financier, il y a aussi un volet éducation, un volet formation. Donc, avec des outils financiers et des outils non financiers. Donc, nous, on pense et on estime qu'on est en mesure de proposer donc, un projet de financement agricole inclusif, durable, multi-acteurs, basé sur le dialogue, la confiance, dans le but de faciliter le développement de l'agriculture familiale en Afrique de l'Ouest. Je vous le rappelle, c'est un peu notre cheval de bataille à SOS1 depuis une vingtaine d'années, depuis notre création. Et donc, je vous le rappelle, on a donc, dans le cadre de ce projet, des outils financiers, donc une ligne de crédit, j'en ai parlé tout à l'heure, destinée aux institutions de microfinance pour favoriser l'offre de crédit agricole, et un fonds de garantie, c'est ça le côté important ici de ces fonds, c'est un fonds de garantie destiné aux banques pour les encourager à investir dans le milieu agricole. Donc on a ces outils financiers sur deux aspects, et un outil non financier, c'est principalement l'éducation, la formation, programme de formation à destination de plusieurs acteurs, mais notamment des OPA, des organisations professionnelles agricoles, ou bien des réseaux agricoles qui regroupent plusieurs acteurs, et des exploitations familiales, donc des paysans qui vont exploiter leurs champs de façon locale. Il y a un volet transversal, donc là, je le rappelle, c'est le dialogue multi-acteurs sur le financement agricole entre OPA, institutions financières, État, bailleurs de fonds, entre les banques, les institutions même dites publiques, et aussi les réseaux paysans. Pour ce projet AgriPlus, les premiers résultats sont assez positifs. De toute façon, ce sont des acteurs qu'on connaît depuis longtemps, avec qui on a travaillé pendant longtemps. On a travaillé sur d'autres bases. Ici, on a un projet concret, mais on est assez satisfait des résultats. partenariat de qualité, donc avec quelques chiffres ici pour illustrer. 800 millions de francs CFA au 30 juin 2019 et 530 millions de prêts accordés à des organisations paysannes, exploitations familiales et les fonds de garantie avec nous. Donc on parle ici de plusieurs millions de francs CFA. Donc on a des liquidités suffisantes, on peut le dire, même si ce n'est jamais suffisant quand il s'agit d'éradiquer ce genre de problème. Un accompagnement de proximité sur mesure avec les organisations paysannes dans un climat de confiance parce que ce sont des personnes, des acteurs qu'on connaît, avec qui on travaille sur d'autres thématiques, dans d'autres réseaux, pour d'autres projets. Ils viennent nous voir au Luxembourg, on va les voir sur place, on discute beaucoup, on dialogue, on échange dans pas mal de forums, des réunions informelles, parfois même formelles. Et c'est principalement axé donc, sur 3 pays, Burkina Faso, Mali et Niger. Et depuis 2017, il y a eu environ 90 organisations de formés ou qui sont encore actuellement en cours de formation. Donc ça, c'est le deuxième volet, c'est le volet non financier, c'est la formation, c'est l'éducation. Pour ensuite assurer un accompagnement plus efficace. On les forme sur place, mais il ne suffit pas simplement de les former et de partir, on les accompagne, on travaille ensemble, on dialogue. Voilà, dialogue multi-acteurs, avec le motto un peu apprendre ensemble pour agir ensemble. Je voudrais aussi terminer ici par une citation, Esther Duflo, une nouvelle d'économie. Le monde rêve d'une recette miracle contre la pauvreté. Le microcrédit était un candidat tout à fait plausible. Il est temps de revenir à une description plus nuancée des avantages possibles. Mais reprocher au microcrédit d'être inutile ou dangereux parce qu'il ne se révèle pas être cette recette miracle n'a pas grand sens. Et c'est un peu ce pourquoi on milite. En fait, on a tapé dessus, là j'ai tapé dessus pendant 15 minutes, c'est vrai, mais on peut encore trouver des solutions si on fait attention aux risques, si on fait attention aux aspects négatifs. On peut accoucher de projets qui sont respectueux de tous ces éléments. Et voilà, je pense que je vais terminer avec cette citation d'Esther Duflo, qui est française, elle aussi. Je ne sais pas si vous avez des questions, j'espère avoir été clair, j'espère avoir représenté Marine de la meilleure des manières. On a élaboré la présentation ensemble, donc je pense qu'on est assez. Et voilà. Je ne sais pas si on prend les questions tout de suite ou...
Une question américaine. Donc, c'est vrai que j'ai pris la présentation du coup. J'ai 2 questions. Donc, je ne sais pas, est-ce que vous avez parlé du taux d'intérêt appliqué dans le cadre de cité de combien?
Zéro.
Vous êtes arrivé un peu plus tard.
Combien?
Oui.
Voilà.
Donc ici, on parle d'un taux moyen. Donc, on peut
Donc, il y a le maximum.
On peut monter, on a vu, j'ai vu des chiffres moi-même encore plus accablants que cela. Ici, on parle d'un taux moyen. C'est très rare d'en trouver en dessous parce qu'on parle de solutions qui sont dites à court terme. Donc, c'est un peu l'argument qui a été avancé. Les risques sont importants, les risques financiers sont dits importants, donc les taux sont justifiés de cette manière-là. Bien sûr, ce n'est pas une décision que nous défendons. Et nous, notre but, justement, notre action en tant qu'ONG, quand on va sur place, c'est justement de tout mettre en œuvre pour baisser ces taux. Parce que ces taux resteront importants, ils sont liés à des risques qu'on ne peut pas non plus éradiquer complètement. Vous comprenez tous cet aspect-là.
Non, moi, je ne comprends pas.
Vous ne comprenez pas cet aspect-là?
Sans monsieur. Vous êtes en plus une ONG.
Oui.
Et si la microfinance sur place applique des taux, de même ordre, comment vous pouvez justifier en tant qu'ONG qui prétend, n'est-ce pas, venir aider, n'est-ce pas, les PME à se développer, vous appliquez des taux?
Ah, c'est pas nous qui appliquons ces taux-là. Ce sont des instituts de microfinance qui pratiquent ces taux-là. Donc, ce sont des acteurs qui sont sur place, qui pratiquent ces taux-là. Et vous prenez l'exemple de toutes les régions du monde qui pratiquent le microcrédit ou qui utilisent ces outils de microfinance, tous les taux sont à peu près au même niveau. Donc, on peut aller de 20 à 30%, c'est clair. Mais nous, en tant qu'ONG, bien sûr, on n'a pas un coffre-fort avec des billets et on applique un taux de 25% pour en tirer un bénéfice. Nous, justement, on va sur place, on va discuter avec ces acteurs pour tenter de passer sous les 25%, sous les 20%. C'est très utopique. C'est très utopique.
Je suis pas à l'aise avec les éléments de réponse. Moi, je viens de là, je sais ce qui se passe, et je crois que ça creuse encore plus la pauvreté. Donc, les gens qui sont pauvres doivent plus payer pour engraisser, n'est-ce pas, ceux qui sont déjà riches. C'est contradictoire. Bon, passons là-dessus. Donc,
c'est ce que j'ai tenté de démontrer pendant la présentation, que justement, la microfinance, le microcrédit coûte cher aux pauvres. Donc, je ne sais pas si vous avez...
Ici, même, le pauvre.
Comment?
Bon, la deuxième question. Vous avez parlé d'une convention avec le ministère des Affaires étrangères. Donc, d'une dotation de quoi de 700 millions de francs CFA.
C'est un exemple de l'utilisation du budget ici.
Voilà. Ma question concerne, n'est-ce pas, le pourcentage en termes d'investissement et le pourcentage en termes de fonctionnement. C'est-à-dire que sur les 700 millions, suivant cette dotation, vous utilisez quel pourcentage pour les frais de fonctionnement en Europe, ici au Luxembourg, je ne sais pas, et combien dans les pays récipiendaires? Je veux juste le taux.
Il faut savoir une chose, c'est que ces fonds, quand ils sont injectés, ils sont à destination d'une cible. Donc ici, on parle des pays du Sud. Donc nous, on travaille majoritairement avec les 3 pays dont je vais parler tout à l'heure, Burkina, le Mali et le Niger. Donc ce sont nos partenaires traditionnels. Mais quand vous parlez je pense que vous ne comprenez pas en fait le principe même justement de ce projet. Il ne suffit pas d'avoir une enveloppe et de tirer dans l'enveloppe et de se payer de cette enveloppe pour des frais de fonctionnement. Nous, en fait, cet argent, il est directement injecté pour les acteurs locaux.
D'accord.
Et ça, c'est
clair. Votre budget annuel est de combien? De l'ordre de combien? Et dans ce budget-là, vous utilisez combien dans le cadre de l'aide au développement? Voilà, c'est plus simple.
Notre budget d'ONG?
Oui.
Pour le fonctionnement nord-sud?
Oui, le budget, oui.
Le budget, vous pourrez le trouver sur notre rapport d'activité. Moi, je ne l'ai pas en tête parce que je ne travaille pas avec ces montants-là directement.
C'est SOS Fin Luxembourg, ils ont un site web et j'imagine qu'il y a ici.
SOS Fin Luxembourg, exactement. Mais là, ce sont 2 choses complètement différentes. Ici, par exemple, nous, notre budget en tant qu'ONG, il provient du ministère, mais parce que nous, on fait une demande au ministère pour avoir un financement. Et ensuite, il y a des récoltes de fonds, des services récoltes de fonds. Par exemple, en ce moment, on a fait une action avec des restaurants exquis. Il y a une union dans les restaurants exquis. Si vous voulez mettre un ticket restaurant, on multiplie le montant par 5. Ça, ce sont des choses qu'on traite. Ça, c'est une chose. C'est ce qu'on utilise, notre budget ONG au nord. Au sud, ici, c'est complètement différent. C'est un projet à part entière. Et on agit dans le volet sud.
Très bien, merci beaucoup.
Alexandre.
Oh. Alors, the next talk will be by Tegawende Isiande from University of Luxembourg, who's working on the Money Box project, correct?
No, yes, partly. I apologize already because it will be slightly different from what you have heard so far, simply because I come from academia and we are often boring. You know? so basically, I'm from the University of Luxembourg, and so I'm a research scientist at SNT. SNT is the Interdisciplinary Center for Security and Trust, and my research is mostly on software security. Okay, so I work a lot on software security, especially everything related to malicious software. Okay, basically, and we use a lot of machine learning because there is a lot of apps out there to learn about the behavior of software. And then, if we want to secure them, then we can think of blockchain and other technologies. So, why do I care about? Why am I here? It's because of this. We all talk about mobile money. It's an African story. Everybody's talking about it. If you take countries like Kenya, interestingly, as of June 2018, the whole GDP of the country is now flowing through, mobile money. So that's actually the most impressive, I would say, data that you can find about this. The problem is that what we are not talking about often is this. There are a lot of challenges actually in mobile money. First of all, fraud. Did you know that 37% of transactions in mobile money are fraudulent? Okay. So this is from the Central Bank of Kenya. 37% of transactions. It's not 37% of the amount, okay? Because the fraud by themselves are sometimes very tiny. You know, what happens during the fraud is just that I ask you to do a transaction for me, and I say I don't have, money back. So instead of 110, I give you 100. So I keep 10. Okay, this happens a lot. This is one of the first things. And if you take mobile money companies, mobile operators, they often lose a lot of money. You know, like last year, okay, I myself know of one company who has lost actually $1 million US. Okay, but it doesn't matter because he gains much more than this. So it comes back to your thing about the microfinance costing a lot. There is a lot of counterfeit money. Now it doesn't go well. Okay. The second problem is this. Generally, if you want to send money, this is what you see, right? Okay, with your feature phone. So the problem is, what does it say? Who did you send the money to? What for? This information is not there. Okay, so probably you need somebody else to do it. This is how fraud starts. Okay, because somebody is going to do this for this old lady. She doesn't understand what's going on with her money, actually. Because most of the people are actually illiterate who are going to use the mobile money. So the technology itself is problematic. And then the last thing is like this. Generally, if you go to a mobile money shop, you will see this. So basically, every shop needs to cover like 10 so that it can satisfy all the users. Simply because those people do not talk to each other. It's not interoperable. Okay, so it's closed platforms and so on because everybody has its own money. So the four challenges we can look at when you look at mobile money is this. There is very poor user experience, okay, poor security, limited interoperability, non-global. And yet everybody is talking about this. Mobile money is a big success and so on and so on. So it's really problematic that despite all of this, we talk about mobile money as a success. Okay? So what will change is fintechs. Okay, saying we are going to go from this one here to this one because it's easy, more convenient, and so on to use. Okay, so today I'm just going to focus on this one. Why this one is not really better than that one. Okay, in terms of security. Okay, so generally, if you have an app to do mobile money, so like MPay, Gcash, or another app here, sorry, Oxygen Wallet, everybody starts by saying that, okay, this is the most safe thing that you can do. Okay, it's the most secure thing. So I'm looking to demonstrate that this is not true, actually. Okay, so how do I do this? I just collect the mobile money apps. Okay, 48 of them used by more than 1 million users in 28 countries, and then we are going to look how they have been implemented. Okay, I just look at very simple vulnerabilities that exist and are well known. Okay, this is a bit technical, but basically just understand that this is a problem. This is a problem, a big problem. All of these are really serious problems. Okay, and all of these solutions that are well used actually have them. Okay, that's the key message. So if I just take one here, insufficiently protected credentials. So basically with this one, if I take this application here, I can actually learn the credential of somebody else. So this means exactly that I can steal money, actively steal money from many people, okay? This happens a lot, okay? So, and if you look at, if you use a credit score of these apps, most of them actually rate very low. Even the leisure apps are sometimes better than mobile money apps. So we did that. 2 years later, we did again, after, of course, telling them that there are problems. What happens? Okay, it did not improve very well. They didn't change anything. Okay, so most of the vulnerabilities are there, and even sometimes some new vulnerabilities appear in this thing. Okay? So what we have decided to propose is just, okay, let's say we want to switch the backend of the mobile money system, because for now, I don't know if all of you know mobile money with mobile operators, where it comes from. It comes from, from the paying system of minutes. So basically, it was not done for that, but it's being leveraged to do that. So it has many issues. So if we propose to redo everything, so what we want to do is something like this. Let's build it from scratch, okay? And first of all, we need to focus on security first. So we want to build another backend here. So, okay, we can do whatever we want. So, okay, we just choose to do it with permission ledgers. Okay, we need to have some modules so that we can ensure that we can connect here natively without going through the operators. We can also take into account operators. This is the legacy. We need to do it. But also, we need to take into account that in most parts of Africa, there is no connectivity. Whether it's by internet or 2G or 3G, so we need an offline emulator, okay, where we can do, because it's possible, technically it's possible to do transactions offline. And we need this, KYC. We don't have it. Until now, we still don't have it, okay? Most importantly, we need this, an API. You would think that we have it, we don't. And this is something really interesting because I have students in Burkina Faso who have this problem. So basically, they have an idea, a very nice idea of making, delivery of food, which is like Deliveroo or something that works here very well. Okay, so they go to the operator, they ask to meet, leaders at the operator because they want to do it that people pay through mobile money. They never get the meeting. They never get the meeting to meet somebody. Because there is no API, they need to have an actual physical meeting so that they can be given some keys to implement this. They never get the meeting. What happens is that there was the son of somebody very, very powerful, who actually came and went to have the meeting and developed the app 1 year later. You understand? So this is also a poverty issue, okay? You have your own ideas, but you cannot actually implement it because the technology actually favors corruption. It doesn't have this. Okay, and on top of that, if we want to do financial inclusion, we need to take into account that financial inclusion is not just about payments. It's not about remittances. There are many things that can be done on top of this. Okay, so this is useless. We have already done some proof of works or proof of concepts about this. Okay, so the general idea that we would like to do eventually, all of this is open source. We want to open source this so that people can actually change. It's like what we white label. They can change the backend of existing systems into something that will be natively interoperable, natively secure, natively open. All of this like this. Okay, that's the idea of what we would like to do. Okay, so I will just stop here, and if you have questions, and I will start with this picture. This comes back to what you said about the 25%. This is very interesting, actually. So this is a loan, an advertisement for loan. So un crédit de 250 000 francs à 15 millions à un taux de 7%. And this is the advertisement. So this is the best effort that can happen. Do you know 15 millions de francs CFA? How much is it? 15 millions de francs CFA. 10 millions, c'est 15 000 euros. Donc, voilà, 22 000. So it's 22K. 22K, 7%. Okay, and this is 7% over years. Several years. If you do it in 1 year. So I have made the same experience. So this bank, I didn't put the name, but you know the colors, right? This bank has, the mother company is here, okay? So I went to the mother company here to get the same amount. It was 0.8. Okay, and back in Africa it's 7%. It's the same bank. You know, it's not another bank. So this is what Moneybox wants to do, is to avoid this kind of shameful advertisements. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay. Ok, yes, merci.
Ok, merci pour la présentation.
Oui.
Donc, ma question est de savoir quelle a été la valeur ajoutée,
Oui.
n'est-ce pas, de votre projet de recherche.
D'accord.
Parce que si je comprends bien, avec 3 ou 4 opérateurs qui font, n'est-ce pas, dans le transfert d'argent,
Oui.
si on réussit à fédérer les 4 API,
Oui.
c'est-à-dire que si chaque opérateur met à disposition son API,
Oui.
alors on sait mettre une couche au-dessus
C'est ça.
qui permet, n'est-ce pas, l'interfaçage
C'est ça.
de l'interopérabilité.
C'est ça.
Donc, dans le cadre de votre projet,
Mhm.
j'aimerais un peu comprendre la valeur ajoutée,
Ah.
donc ce qui a été l'innovation, je ne sais pas.
D'accord. Ok, merci beaucoup. J'aimerais d'abord dire qu'il y a 2 parties dans ma recherche. Hein. Moi, je suis dans la recherche dans la sécurité logicielle. Donc, on a travaillé beaucoup sur des millions d'applications Android dans le monde. Et c'est en voyant les vulnérabilités dans ces applications que je me suis dit, mais tiens, moi, je viens d'Afrique. Et je sais que les applications Android qui marchent bien en Afrique, ce sont celles sur le paiement mobile. Donc, je me suis dit, je vais regarder ces paiements mobiles-là, à quel point c'est sûr. Et c'est là que ma tête a explosé quand j'ai vu ça. Okay? Donc, ça, c'est la première contribution, c'était autour de ça d'abord. De faire tout ce qui est la vulnérabilité, l'étude des vulnérabilités, et de pouvoir dire à MRTL, de pouvoir dire à MP, de fixer les vulnérabilités. Et 2 années plus tard, je reviens et c'est toujours là. Okay? Donc, ça, c'est d'abord le premier. Le deuxième point, c'est à propos de l'interopérabilité en discutant avec les opérateurs. Ça fait 15 ans qu'ils discutent de ça. La Banque mondiale a financé des études. Hein. J'ai regardé la dernière fois le chiffre. C'était 3 milliards. 3 milliards de francs CFA d'études ont été financées pour créer l'interopérabilité. 0. Ce n'est pas arrivé. Donc, l'idée de ça, en fait, c'est de faire un white label pour permettre même à quelqu'un qui n'est pas un opérateur, une petite organisation, de pouvoir avoir un backend, de pouvoir lancer. Parce que c'est seulement dans la compétition qu'on va faire bouger les opérateurs. Parce que pour le moment, ils sont les seuls à avoir ce qu'il faut pour faire une mobile money. C'est eux qui ils décident de tout, ils font. C'est ça, en fait.
Donc, dans tous les cas, il faudra collaborer avec ces opérateurs.
Pas nécessairement, parce que si nous sommes nombreux maintenant à avoir des opérateurs de mobile money, sans être des opérateurs télécoms, ils vont devoir s'adapter.
Ah, et donc, à travers votre solution, vous voulez les amener
avec les forcer. Forcer le bon terme. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. Bon, c'est très loin, hein. On est très loin de pouvoir le faire parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'enjeux financiers, mais il faut régler.
Merci.
Voilà, merci. Okay. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much, Thierry. Next, we have Jean-Sébastien Dupert de Etica. Je vais vous parler des banques coopératives en français aussi.
Yeah, but I have one survey. Is there some people really uncomfortable with French because my English is not, but I can do it in English. Oh, ok. Bon, alors je vais le faire en français. Je suppose que la présentation.
Ah, oui, pardon, c'est la voix de gauche.
Alors, en 2 mots, est-ce que vous connaissez peut-être déjà Etica? Donc, pour citer un peu en 2 mots qui nous sommes, donc moi je travaille donc pour une association sans but lucratif qui s'appelle Etica, qui a été fondée il y a 23 ans au Luxembourg. Et on travaille donc, entre autres, avec la Sparkasse, donc la banque et caisse d'épargne de l'État, sur des questions relatives donc à la promotion de l'épargne responsable dans l'économie luxembourgeoise, donc avec une plus-value sociale et environnementale. Et donc là, donc suite à la demande d'Alex, je me suis dit c'est l'occasion à la fois pour parler du thème de la journée qui est l'inclusion financière, mais aussi de comment on peut l'entendre avec la question justement des banques sociales et coopératives. Donc pour nous, à Etica, on s'intéresse avec une inclusion financière prise au sens large, c'est-à-dire qu'on ne va pas obligatoirement traiter la question qui est largement traitée aujourd'hui sur toucher les populations pauvres, issus soit des pays industrialisés, soit des pays non industrialisés, sur la question de l'accès aux services bancaires de base, sachant que dans les pays industrialisés, elle est plus ou moins bien traitée. Par contre, nous, ce qui nous intéresse dans l'inclusion financière, c'est de voir ça au sens large, c'est-à-dire comment un acteur bancaire peut effectivement s'intégrer dans un territoire avec une population pour répondre à ses besoins concernant l'épargne de crédit. Et donc là, je ne vous apprendrai rien en disant qu'il y a eu quand même beaucoup de, d'insatisfaction concernant la clientèle bancaire dans les pays industrialisés, particulièrement depuis le crash de 2008. Vous avez le résultat d'un sondage qui a été fait au Royaume-Uni, mais je pense que si on le faisait ici ou dans d'autres pays européens, on aurait la même chose. Et donc nous, à Ethica, on s'est intéressé de près à la question des banques coopératives. Ce que vous savez certainement, c'est une vieille affaire, ça remonte 2 siècles, donc les années 1830 en Allemagne, où le fondateur des caisses, Raiffeisen, avait constaté que effectivement, dans le milieu dans lequel il opérait, donc dans l'Allemagne rurale, la majorité des paysans avaient un accès extrêmement difficile au crédit, et quand c'était un accès au crédit, c'était un accès avec un usurier, qui était généralement un juif. Donc, vous connaissez l'histoire, parce que c'était l'une des seules populations qui avait le droit de traiter l'argent avec intérêt. Donc, il prêtait avec un taux usuraire, et donc, soit la personne pouvait rembourser son crédit, mais était ruinée quasiment, parce que voilà, c'est un peu la même problématique que Alex avait mise en place sur la question des microcrédits aujourd'hui dans les pays issus, c'est-à-dire qu'il y a un taux tellement élevé que soit le crédit était remboursé, mais en étranglant l'emprunteur, soit il faisait faillite. Et donc, Raiffeisen avait fondé des caisses en disant donc, non seulement il ne veut plus d'un système comme ça, mais il veut une mutualisation du risque, c'est-à-dire que tout le crédit ne sera plus porté par une personne, un usurier en l'occurrence, mais par une communauté. Et dans cette communauté, donc, on aura justement des personnes qui auront peut-être un excès d'épargne, qui pourront prêter, et de l'autre qui auront un manque, qui pourront emprunter. Et donc, c'est comme ça que le système a fonctionné. Et on peut dire qu'il a relativement bien fonctionné. Il s'est vraiment développé, d'ailleurs, bien au-delà du système bancaire, puisque, comme vous savez, le système coopératif a explosé en même temps que le mouvement ouvrier, donc avec la fondation de coopératives alimentaires, de coopératives de santé, etc. Le principe est donc pas seulement de couvrir un service peu ou mal couvert par le système capitaliste, mais en même temps de proposer une vision alternative de la société. C'est-à-dire ne pas simplement dire une action égale une voix, mais de dire une personne, à partir du moment où elle détiendra une part de coopérative, aura le même pouvoir qu'une personne qui en détiendra 100 ou 1 million. Et donc ce système a quand même connu un déclin à la fin du XXe siècle. Vous savez, aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup de coopératives qui n'ont de coopératives que le nom, y compris dans le secteur bancaire. Et d'où l'intérêt pour Ethica de soutenir, on va dire, toutes les initiatives dans ce domaine-là. Et justement, il se trouve que parmi nos voisins belges, ont mis en place donc la création d'une nouvelle banque qui s'appelle l'UBI, que je vais vous présenter maintenant. Parce que vous allez me dire, mais pourquoi on s'intéresse à une banque belge, puisque nous sommes quand même une association luxembourgeoise. Pour la bonne et simple raison qu'au niveau européen, c'est la seule création bancaire à l'heure actuelle qui remplisse toutes ces caractéristiques. Donc, ils veulent à la fois justement revenir au métier basique du banquier, donc pas de produits très compliqués, mais une réponse aux besoins d'une population concernant le dépôt d'épargne et les crédits à la consommation, immobilier, etc. Sans oublier bien sûr la question écologique qui n'était pas flagrante ni au 19e ni au début du 20e siècle, mais qui aujourd'hui est incontournable. Donc voilà, aujourd'hui nous sommes là, nous sommes donc la seule association non belge qui avons décidé d'investir du capital dans cette initiative, qui démarre d'ailleurs aujourd'hui sa souscription publique de manière massive en Belgique. Et donc vous avez là-dedans à peu près tout ce que vous pouvez trouver dans la société civile, donc les organisations liées à la question, l'équivalent du cercle des ONG, donc la question internationale, des organisations liées à la question du travail, donc la majeure partie des syndicats belges le sont, des associations pour la promotion du travail social, etc., qui donc soutiennent l'initiative dans la mesure où, comme dit, elle veut répondre vraiment aux besoins de base de la société. Donc aujourd'hui, il y a 52 000 coopératrices et coopérateurs, dont j'en fais aussi partie à titre privé, parce que je suis résident belge, mais il faut savoir qu'il y a aussi 60 résidents luxembourgeois qui ont souscrit, parce que Newbie se veut bien sûr une banque coopérative, et ce sera une banque dans la zone euro. Et donc, elle sera aussi, pourra aussi intéresser les personnes qui sont résidentes ici au Luxembourg ou dans le reste de l'Europe. Et en plus des investisseurs privés et personnels, il y a aussi des institutionnels, dont un groupe mutualiste. Et voilà. Donc, en deux mots, donc, Newbie, c'est donc une banque qui veut justement renouer avec les métiers de base de la banque, avec donc la mise en avant de certaines valeurs qui sont généralement pas tellement le cas dans le secteur bancaire. Par exemple, la sobriété, ça veut dire que dans la banque, l'échelle de salaire, elle va de 1 à 5 entre le salaire le plus bas et le salaire le plus élevé. Durabilité, donc là, on l'a vu, donc privilège, autant que possible, on privilégiera les investissements dans le durable, mais ce n'est pas une obligation. L'idée, c'est avant tout d'être proche des gens, de proposer des produits qui sont simples, aussi bien dans l'investissement que dans l'épargne, avec 50 pages à lire, des produits qui concernent donc les besoins de base, hein, comme dit dans le crédit, c'est le crédit à la consommation, le crédit à l'immobilier. Au niveau des investissements, il n'y aura pas de produits complexes, il y aura des produits d'épargne, plus quelques SICAV, mais les SICAV, bien sûr, qui s'inscriront dans la durabilité. Donc, c'est vraiment ça qui va faire la grosse différence avec l'offre des banques mainstream en Belgique. Donc, aujourd'hui, ce qui existe déjà, c'est la carte de crédit qui est une carte prepaid. Donc, impossible de s'endetter avec-dessus, puisque comme un abonnement prepaid, vous pouvez consommer que ce que vous avez auparavant abondé. Vous aurez bien sûr avec Newbie les services de base, donc un compte courant, un compte d'épargne, voilà, des classements et des produits d'assurance, on va dire basiques, qui concernent plutôt la vie de tout un chacun. Donc, à l'heure actuelle, on est dans la phase, on a eu donc cette semaine donc, le feu vert de la FSMA pour faire maintenant le démarrage de la souscription massive. Le but étant à la fois d'obtenir des coopérateurs qui mettent le minimum, c'est-à-dire une part de 20 €, mais aussi des personnes qui veulent mettre plus, et donc pour augmenter les fonds propres de la banque. Puisque pour obtenir la licence bancaire, il faudra qu'on ait atteint un montant qui sera de l'ordre de 30 millions d'euros dans les 5 semaines qui vont suivre, donc en touchant à la fois donc, des particuliers comme des investisseurs institutionnels. Voilà, donc bien sûr, donc là, c'est les différents régulateurs qui devront contrôler si nous sommes dans les... Donc ils ont donné maintenant le feu vert pour la souscription publique, et donc d'ici la fin du mois de mi-décembre, on verra si on aura obtenu l'argent pour démarrer. Voilà, donc oui, comme je dis, ce n'est pas uniquement une banque avec des produits bancaires, mais il y a aussi des produits d'assurance, donc des produits basiques, hein, auto, vie et voilà. Donc, comme dit, encore une fois, nous, à Etika, on soutient à la fois par le capital. On a investi 7 000 €, donc ce n'est pas non plus phénoménal, mais par l'idéologie, d'où la présentation que je fais aujourd'hui et qu'on va continuer sur les semaines qui vont venir à Luxembourg, parce qu'il est important pour nous qu'une banque, surtout comme vous avez vu dans la presse qu'on parle beaucoup de banques qui sont en train de fermer, de virer du personnel, il est vrai que le contexte avec des taux négatifs actuellement n'est vraiment pas le plus favorable pour démarrer une banque, ça c'est clair. Mais nous soutenons cette initiative parce que, comme dit, si Newbie, et on l'espère bien, arrivera à obtenir le capital suffisant et la licence bancaire, on est persuadé que ça donnera des idées pour d'autres pays européens pour remettre en place un système coopératif bancaire. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, le gros souci, c'est que Il y a bien des banques sociales ou éthiques, mais les plus importants, comme par exemple la Triodos, ben, ça reste une SA. C'est-à-dire que ça restera une banque qui sera sous la forme avec quelques actionnaires qui certes, bien intentionnés, mais nous, on préfère un système plus démocratique avec des assemblées générales, même si c'est plus lourd organisé, sur le principe, donc, une part égale une voix. Parce qu'on estime justement, pour revenir à la question de l'inclusion financière, que c'est important. Donc, quand on parle d'inclusion financière, que les personnes qui sont soit clients en tant qu'épargnants, soit clients en tant que crédit, comprennent que voilà, une banque, ce n'est pas uniquement un service financier derrière un écran Internet, mais ça va vraiment répondre aux besoins d'une communauté dans un territoire donné pour que l'économie locale puisse fonctionner. Donc, en investissant dans l'économie réelle et non pas dans l'économie spéculative, pour faire un métier très, très terre-à-terre, mais qui aujourd'hui est mal, il faut le dire, est mal couvert par les banques type too big to fail. Voilà. Je vous remercie et si vous avez des questions, je suis. Et j'ai aussi des petits flyers pour ceux qui veulent en emporter. Oui.
Je n'ai pas compris. Donc la banque n'existe pas.
Non, absolument pas. Donc là, pour l'instant, ce qui existe, c'est une société coopérative financière qui vient d'avoir donc le feu vert pour faire cette souscription publique. Et si, donc à l'échéance, vers le 15 décembre, la somme des 30 millions d'euros d'épargne n'est pas obtenue, alors les personnes qui auront souscrit pendant cette période seront remboursées. Ceux qui, comme moi, ont souscrit initialement auront, en fonction du capital déjà consommé, la quote-part. Mais bon, voilà, la banque n'existe pas à ce jour, absolument.
Mais je n'ai pas bien compris, en fait, c'est parce que vous allez devoir investir. Lorsque vous aurez l'argent, vous allez investir pour des infrastructures, vous allez investir pour payer des gens et tout. Donc, à un moment donné, vous allez quand même, il y aura des prêts avec des taux d'intérêt pour couvrir ces investissements. Je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qui sera vraiment différent de ce que font aujourd'hui les nouvelles banques mobiles, Boursorama et compagnie.
C'est extrêmement simple. Ce qui va être très différent déjà, c'est l'échelle de salaire. Hein. Toutes ces banques mobiles, vous n'aurez pas une échelle de 1 à 5 entre le salaire le plus bas et le salaire le plus élevé. Vous n'aurez pas des actionnaires privés derrière qui vont pousser pour le rendement. Vous n'aurez pas des produits complexes, puisque là, on me dit, on va vraiment faire une banque basique. Quoi. C'est ça qui va faire franchement la différence. Et puis surtout, vous n'aurez pas, si vous allez sur n'importe quelle banque Internet, la possibilité d'intervenir dans la gestion de cette banque. Nous, on tient à vraiment faire le principe de base de la coopérative, un homme égale une voix. Oui.
Est-ce qu'il y aura une licence bancaire full banking license?
Qu'est-ce que tu entends par full banking?
De prendre des dépôts et donner des crédits.
Ah oui, bien sûr, ça sera...
par l'autorité bancaire en Belgique.
Ce sera donc non seulement en Belgique, mais comme ce sera une banque dans la zone euro, elle pourra aussi avoir des activités ailleurs. Mais bon, soyons clairs, dans l'activité crédit, c'est clair que ça sera principalement sur le territoire belge.
Mais si j'ai bien compris, il faut avoir un investisseur qui travaille déjà la finance.
Oui.
C'est ça, c'est normalement plus que 50% du capital de l'Unibar.
Alors oui, il faut effectivement donc des institutionnels, donc là il y en a cité Monceau. Pendant cette période-là, en parallèle de toucher, on va dire, le grand public, il y aura une campagne qui va se faire pour toucher des investisseurs institutionnels, effectivement, pour être à la fois en mesure, hein, comme tu sais, donc, un investisseur institutionnel, c'est quelqu'un qui est peut-être en mesure de mettre du jour au lendemain 10 millions d'euros sur la table parce que la banque a besoin de ça dans un délai très court. Donc ça, c'est clair qu'on ne peut pas demander ça à des particuliers. Donc oui, il y a ces deux campagnes en parallèle qui vont se faire.
Quel est le temps de retenue des états? Ce n'est pas les choses, en fait, c'est le capital.
Oui.
Il ne peut pas pointer demain, je vais
Non, alors oui. Alors, c'est clair que l'achat de parts de Newbie, ça sera des temps relativement longs, ça ne sera pas très liquide, ça c'est clair. Je t'avoue, je n'ai pas lu encore la notice, mais j'imagine que si je vais probablement le faire de toute façon en titre privé, mais imaginons que je veux y investir 500 ou 1000 euros donc en capital propre de la banque, hein, donc ça ne sera pas quelque chose qui sera, ce sera probablement sur minimum sur une période de 5 ans avec des conditions spéciales si je peux le sortir avant, etc. Parce que c'est clair que une banque pour démarrer, elle a besoin de fonds propres et c'est des fonds propres qui ne seront pas très liquides par la force des choses.
Okay.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Okay, so I'll be talking about IOUs and financial autonomy. Okay, yeah, great. So first, do a short presentation of Secoba, what we do. Then try and give you a crash course on money, and then the rest will be hopefully obvious. So Secoba, what we do is we are trying to improve on informal credit, okay? Overcome limitations of informal credit. Now, credit is the ability to say, I'm good for it, you know, trust me, okay, I can pay. I don't need to pay because I'm good for it, okay? Just write it down. So, how does it work in the real world? You know, we've got Maria and Abby, and, you know, Abby buys some cakes because Maria sells cakes, and it's $30, and now Abby owes Maria $30. No money has changed hands. And then maybe afterwards, Maria goes to Abby's, in this case, cafe or a restaurant, has a meal, it costs $35. You can see that before that, Abby owed Maria $35. She, instead of paying $35, she uses the $30 that he owed her, and now she owes him $5. Very simple, no money changes hands, okay? This is credit, that's what's called credit. And that's what we're building. We're building a system to register, track, and clear IOUs, debt, okay? So this informal credit that this is a simple example I showed you, has limitations. Now it's being used worldwide. It's a traditional way of working, okay? It's been used everywhere throughout, you know, millennia, basically, since money existed. The problem of informal credit is no legal certainty. You can transact only with people, you transact only with people you know, because it's about trust. And, well, it does require funds to settle debt, okay? So that's a clearer part which we'll see in a second. So what does Secoba do? Whoops. Secoba tries to overcome this. So these are super simple examples here. Maria says to Abby, you owe me $50. He says, no, I don't. I forgot or whatever. And she says, well, yes, you do. It's registered on blockchain using Secoba. Legal certainty. Maria goes to some merchant and says, you know, I want to buy something, can I pay later? The merchant says, I don't know you. So in the real world, this would, for example, in Africa, it's a really funny conversation with Ghana from Sudan, I think. In Africa, they would actually go on the phone and try to find intermediaries, and this is a long process to find someone both can trust, etc. In this case, Secoba automates this and finds an intermediary or two, and then the deal can be done, okay, automatically, because these intermediaries in the system, they actually have approved or have agreed in advance to be intermediaries. The second situation that happens with informal credit, you know, Maria says, you owe me $100. And this word is this, Charles says, well, I'd like to pay you, but I haven't been paid either. And quite possibly, it could be something like this. Of course, it's simplified example, but it could be that, you know, A owes B, B owes C, C owes A, and they all sit there and wait until they get paid because they can't settle their debt. But if you, in a system like Secoba, where Secoba sees these debts and can clear it, that's called clearing. Clearing has occurred, problem solved. So that, in a nutshell, is the advantage that we are bringing to informal credit, okay? And it's a huge market, because in developing countries, you know, people are not employed in corporations mostly. The majority of people are small businesses, they work for themselves. There is a huge number of small and micro businesses in developing countries. Okay, these are people who know about informal credit. We don't have to tell them what it is, they know it already. So we're working on our app, there's a test app already. We hope to get something that's close to MVP for beta testing next year. So to summarize, informal credit is already widely used, has always been widely used. We provide technology to make it more effective. Hopefully, we can boost local economies with this. An interesting feature of Secoba is that people who are unbanked and undocumented can use Secoba. They can register and then repay the debt using the system without a bank account. So they can create a credit history without having a bank account. Okay? So that's that. That was Secoba. Are there any questions at this stage?
How do you ensure KYC?
We will want to have KYC later, but these people know each other, okay? So we don't need KYC to start with. You create an account, and then if you trust someone, you say to the system, I trust this guy for that amount. You decide who you trust.
So
Okay.
if they decide who they trust, why do they need an intermediary to trust, third party?
Well, that's if I don't know you, okay, so I want to do, but I know her,
Yes.
and she knows you, and she's agreed to be intermediary in advance in Secoba. Then
Okay.
that is,
Okay, so
Okay.
Secoba is registering, okay, I see.
yeah, the intermediary part is super important. That's what we have. It's super important because otherwise you're limited to whom you know, and we want to expand this circle of trust.
Nice. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is this similar to the lack of trust in B2B originally, or?
To some extent it is. There is one difference, and I don't really have that much time to go into it, is that we want a realistic system. There'll be fees, there'll be conditions, there'll be terms, etc. So it's like Web of Trust, but with business features and with real life features. And not just a simple, I or you, you're him, and etc. Okay. So, we've got 10 minutes, 11 now, wonderful. So, money, a crash course. I'll try and keep it very simple, okay? So, first of all, the problem with money is that, you go to the local cafe and everyone has lots of opinions and what's money and what's not. Let's first start with the fact, with the definition that we are talking about commercial money, okay? Maybe you've heard about these big stones on some island being used as money in the Pacific and all kinds of strange things. That's not commercial money. Okay, that's ceremonial money, or ceremonial currency. There are social currencies. Okay, in Africa you've got tribes where, for social interaction you use a certain type of currency. Okay, but typically that currency is not used for buying food. Okay. Also, money is not currency. There's a difference. Money is expressed in a currency, but it's not currency. Okay. And finally, commercial money is not money things. A thing. It's not gold is a thing. Commercial money is not a thing. So this is just a definition. Why do we take this definition? Because that's what money was through most of history. Okay, commercial money, as opposed to the other forms. So we're talking about commercial money. Now, money is essentially credit. There's a guy who, about a century ago, wrote a very clear and simple definition. Credit and credit alone is money. Alfred Mitchell Ellis. And it's not like this is true since a century. This has always been true. We've just forgotten it, and some economists still haven't realized it. So money is basically a particular kind of debt that is transferable, easily transferable, and generally accepted in a certain community or a country or whatever. Okay, and there are exceptions in times of war. There are exceptions, but that is what it has been generally throughout history. Okay, except in some very special circumstances. Okay, and today money is basically created by commercial banks, some of it by the central bank, most of it, the vast majority by commercial banks, and money today is basically a bank IOU. That's what it is. Now, money myths. Very quickly, I'm going to go through some myths just to clarify maybe a little bit of, and then you can challenge me on this. So there's money myth that money is in the eye of the beholder. It's like everyone has an idea and we can talk about it, and lots of people think we don't really know what money is, and therefore anyone can just talk about it, right? That's not true. We know precisely what money is, and it's not complicated, okay? Money originated from barter, okay? That's a myth. It's a complete myth. Coins were the first forms of money. Not true. Money preceded coins by over a millennium, probably more, okay? And in fact, there were banking, powers that knew about coins but didn't use them because they found them useless. Money myth. The value of ancient coins was determined by the metal content. No. A gold Rolex is worth a lot, not because of the gold content, because it's a gold Rolex, okay? So the gold in ancient coins determined that it was a sign to show this coin is worth a lot, but the worth did not come from the metal. Money myth. Because of interest rates, the volume of money must always increase. So this is the idea that money exists as such, and if there's interest, where does it come from? So it must be more and more. And Karl Marx never understood this. It's very funny. Like Karl Marx was in Capitals, writing saying, where does the new money come from interest? Well, there is a simple explanation which we'll go through. So now there are cases when, because of interest, the money volume does increase. Okay, but in general, under normal conditions, this does not have to be so. Money is created by central banks. Okay, so true. Commercial banks create the vast majority of money. Money myth. We have a fractional reserve system, and actually there probably still are college level textbooks which actually describe fractional reserve banking and say this is how it works. It doesn't. And Christine Lagarde, FMI chief Christine Lagarde, a couple of years ago, made a speech at the Bank of England and talking about fractional reserve system. This woman doesn't know how money works. It's very strange. This is simply not true. We need central banks. Well, we don't. In China, they had a money system that was quite okay for many, many centuries without any central banks, and even Europe had this. So facts. We've looked at the myths. Now let's look at a few facts, okay, that are simple, corollaries of what money is. For every unit of money circulation, there is a corresponding debt. It's a simple bookkeeping thing. It's very simple, right? You have an asset, which is the money, and you've got, the corresponding debt. Okay? Money cannot be owned. Well, no, because it's a contract, because it's an issuer. Okay? You cannot own a contract. Okay? You can own a piece of gold, but you cannot own money. And the other side of this is if you can own something, it cannot be money. All right? So can you own a Bitcoin? Yes. Therefore, it cannot be money. Very simple. Money fact, and we'll get to that one a bit later. Money can only keep its value if it is spent at the right time. Now that is an absolute key thing, and would be worth an entire probably half day or more to get into this. This is a very key thing of understanding of money. It doesn't have a value as such. It needs to be spent. Finally, money is generally, borrowed in order to be repaid. And people forget that. It's normal, okay? Keep that in mind. When money is issued, it's a cycle. It's issued, it circulates, and then it wants to be repaid, and then it gets destroyed. And that's, maybe I missed that slide. When money gets repaid, when a debt gets repaid, a loan gets repaid, money gets destroyed. Money is a living thing. It's birth, creation, it lives, it circulates, and then it dies, it gets destroyed. And that's natural. That is a natural thing. So let's see how this works with a credit conversion. We call something, basically money generally gets created by a credit conversion, what I call credit conversion, and banks do the credit conversion in our monetary system today. How does it work? You've got a buyer, you've got a trader. Now, if the buyer could go to the car trader and say, hey, I owe you, whatever, and give me the car, and sign a paper, maybe he'll do it, but that doesn't work in most cases. The trader will not accept that. So the buyer needs to go to the bank and borrow money. What happens when money gets borrowed? Buyer owes 100 to the bank, and bank owes 100 to the buyer. So you say nothing happened. I go to you and say, I owe you 100 and you owe me 100. So what? What's the purpose? Well, the purpose is that the 100 that the buyer owes has a much, much lower credit weight, so to speak, than the money that the bank owes. Okay, because the 100 that the bank owes, that is money. That is high credit. That's bank credit. Whereas the 100 that the buyer owes the bank, that's a low credit. That's why the buyer has to pay a fee. Okay, so the bank does something we call credit conversion. Then, with this IOU of the bank, the buyer can transfer that IOU to the car seller and the car gets to the bank. That's how it works. It's called credit conversion. Next, we go through the credit cycle. So we have a capitalist, a bank, and we've got some workers who work. And again, if the capitalist was able to pay these guys directly, he would try and do it. But usually doesn't work. So he, again, borrows from the bank, which means he owes the bank, and the bank owes him. Now, it's another thing, I'm sorry if I go back to Karl Marx here, it's another thing that Karl Marx just didn't understand at all. Capitalists are people who are in debt in general. These are not guys who sit on a huge amount of money and can just take any money they want out of it. Capitalists typically are in debt. Okay? Key point. So the capitalist has a debt, and now he's with the 100 that the bank owes him. He can now pay people, for whatever, for the work, for stuff they own, raw materials, whatever. So after a while, he's transferred 50 of these bank credits to the community, and then maybe after a while he only has 10 left. Well, he's got some goods here. Okay, and so various things can happen. Let's say these goods, let's go backward, these goods are valuable and the population, okay, the community wants these goods. So they will actually transfer back some of this. In fact, they may transfer even more because they may think that these goods are so desirable that they'll actually go into debt themselves to get them. That would be a fantastic thing for a capitalist, because now the bank owes him 120, the community owes the bank 20, and the capitalist can repay his debt. So after the cycle is gone, the capitalist has worked well, he's got some money in the bank, which means the bank owes him, and the community has a debt to the bank. And you can do various things like that, and you can see that you add interest to this, and because I had interest here, you see, suddenly from 100 it goes down to 10, so there's one bit of interest. You can clear interest through productivity. Okay, productive activities cancel interest. Okay, so that was our scenario number one. And there are many scenarios. Okay, we don't know, in a specific case how it ends. But let me show you scenario number two. So we are in the same thing, but the capitalist has produced all these goods. He only has 10 units in the bank. He still owes, he now owes 110 because it's interest. And the community, okay, has 90 in the bank. But something happens to the goods. Either they get destroyed, or the community, we'll get back, okay? The community doesn't want to buy these goods because capitalists, produced yellow widgets and everyone wants red widgets. The capitalist cannot sell his goods. So, he cannot repay the debt. So the bank seizes the 10 that's left and says, oh, you're in default. Now, assume now that the bank is the only bank in the country and the capitalist is the only capitalist. What happens? The bank goes bankrupt and the 90 units that the community thought they had in the bank is gone. Okay? Why is it gone? Because they didn't spend the money. The only way the capitalist could actually make this money worth something is with this. If the result of the capitalist's work is not accepted in the market, okay, this ends with money destruction. That's what I mean. Money must be spent in order to retain its value. It's a dynamic process. And of course, in a simple thing like that, you can see if there's only one value that you see it. In a large economy, these little disasters happen all the time, but they even out. Okay, so you don't see it, you only see it if suddenly a lot of banks go bankrupt or a lot of capitalists go to that. Now, okay, I know I'm a bit over, but let me just quickly go through the government, because the government is something an important actor. Remember I said, normally when you borrow money, it's to repay it. There is one exception. That exception is the government, always. And Alfred Richard said, the more government money there is in circulation, the poorer we are. because the government is not going to produce. The government is going to tax. Okay? The second, and again, this is very quick, just as a more impressionist, Alfred Mitchell is talking about France. In France, not so long ago, okay, there were many different monetary units. They were all called livres, okay? So imagine you have euros, but you have all kinds of euros, okay, with different values. These livres were classified into forte monnaie and faible monnaie. The government money being faible, it was weak. Traditionally, in a normal system, the government money is weak and the bank money is strong. This is logical if you think about it. But what we live in a system where the government money and the bank money have been forcibly equal by the system. Okay? And then, okay, just my comment that money from the private sector is productive money because a capitalist, when he borrows money, or she, wants to work, wants to repay the debt. Whereas money from the public sector, okay, is backed by a promise to tax, and if there's too much of it, it's unproductive. All of these are the same materials, okay? So, all right, that's probably all I'm going to say. And now I come to my conclusion, which is really very, very, very simple. Let me just give you an example in politics about passive and active usage. In politics, you can have participation in politics is what we have. We vote every 4 years. That's it. Active would be if we actually participated in decision-making on an ongoing basis, okay? So I just put this so to give you an idea with money. When we use Bankman, this is a passive usage, okay? We are dependent on a central authority who does everything and we just use this money. The active usage would be if we started again to issue and accept IOUs. Now, why is this so crucial and important? Because think of it that way, if you have money in the bank, okay, today we're in a kind of setting where people think, well, I've got money in the bank, I want more. I want more and more and more. And they don't think, oh, back there was someone, if I want more, that other person will have to owe more and more and more also. Yeah, you don't see the debt when you have money in the bank, because the bank is an institution, it's a big building, and you don't care about who owes the money. If you actually start in a community issuing and accepting IOUs, you see who owes, and you understand that trying to just be owed all the time doesn't work. It's antisocial. Okay, money is a give and take. So the centralized banking system, okay, makes people forget this whole that money is a cycle, there's a debt behind, etc. It creates money as a kind of immutable concept of which you want always more. Whereas if you start using IOUs yourself in a community, you start to understand what money really is. That it's a cycle, it lives, you can't just try and have everyone owe you. You owe, you're owned, and you do business and things get cleared and you understand how money really works. So I would say that one of the advantages of Sikoba, I hope so at least, is that it can contribute to what I would say economic and monetary autonomy of people, of companies. That would be a nice side effect of it. Thank you. Questions? We're about to have a break.
Just one question, maybe for you it's obvious, but could you maybe explain how Sikoba's IOU system can actually be used in financial inclusion in developing countries?
Well, they have less money, right? As you know, they have less money, and so with Sikoba, you can buy using IOUs. Okay, you only use money in the sense of bank money to clear the differences. So you can do, and I was open in the first beginning, this first presentation. You'd say, there's a purchase of 30 and then a purchase of 35, and you only need 5 to in actual money if you want to settle. So you can actually do a lot of trades, a lot of transactions using not money, just IOUs, just writing it down, and at the end, you may only need a small fraction of the money that you would have needed if you had done everything in cash. That's the advantage. okay? You need much less cash, much less bank money.
If this, let's say, was not in the, let's say, the so-called development world, but it was in Luxembourg, what kind of license is it? Since it's IOUs, would that fall under CSSF or what is it?
It's, you know, it's not clear because you can still do, in German, it's Wechsel. It's, what's the word in French? I forget what it is. Yeah, it's like it's basically a Tret is like a commercial IOU. You can do it, and I think any company can issue that. There is no regulation for that. In Germany, now one interesting thing is Wechsel. What's interesting is that in Germany, Wechsel were used a lot before. This was very, very common, even for mid-sized companies. And then what happened is that when the euro was introduced, okay, the European Central Bank rules stipulated that these letters of change of Wechsel couldn't be discounted anymore by the banks. So it became, just by a decision from the top, it was said, you cannot discount. So for the banks, it became very, very expensive to use that. And so the banks told their clients, sorry, we don't take your Wechsel anymore. And that killed the market completely. So, you know, we have for the last century, we've been in this thing about, you know, complete centralization of everything. Yeah, where the central banks want to be in control, where they don't tolerate anyone doing something that, you know, that's to do with money. Yeah, you know, you've got the verbal experiment almost a century ago, but you can't today. The central banks are jealously guarding monetary monopoly.
Right, but then there is no from the regulator, or let's say the central cost from the ECB point of view, making commercially unattractive. But from a law point of view, that is still all there. That is still,
yeah.
It should be relatively easily deployable in terms of legal adoption, because that's what most fintechs are struggling with. Is sooner or later they'll need a license. And
we want, of course, be targeting developing countries, but I would say it's possible that we will find out that we can use this in Europe, because all we do is register debt. We just register it. We're not, you know, like a ledger, you can register debt, and if you as a company are allowed to issue debt, you're allowed to, you know, receive it. Maybe we'll find out that we can use, you know, launches in Europe without any problems. We'll see.
Maybe why is commercial money not the currency? How do you define currency?
Well, the currency is what money is defined in. You see, in the three functions of money, which I think is like money as a unit of account. No, money is not a unit of account. Money is expressed in a unit of account. So the currency is the unit of account, whereas the money is the thing that is. So the currency could, for example, even be gold. Yeah, but money is not gold. Money is a debt denominated in gold. Except that the difficulty we have today is because the euro is the currency and the euro is the money. Yeah, and the two are called the same, but one is the money and one is the currency. It would be clearer. One example to understand the difference between currency and money is you take, you go to 3,000 years ago in Babylon or in Sumer, the unit of the silver money was, weight was shekel. So there was a shekel of silver. That was the currency. A temple might well issue a coin made of, I don't know, copper, on which is still the 1 shekel. Okay, then you could see the 1 shekel of silver, that's the currency. You could actually take it in your hand and say, oh, that's a shekel of silver. You know, you go to someone to weigh it. Or you could have your coin, and it's obviously not silver, but it's 1 shekel because it's issued by a temple or by a bank. So there you can see the difference. Yeah, in a euro you cannot see it easily, but that's the conceptual difference. So, our next speaker is Alfred Wolff, a psychologist, an author, an activist, who has written several books on very interesting subjects, including UBI. So, and this is being done, let's say. Welcome. Hello, I could make it in English, but I decided to make it in German because Europe is international. So, wenn ich Deutsch rede. Ich rede über bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen. Definition ist, ich kriege ein Geld am Anfang des Monats ohne Bedingungen, egal ob ich der Ärmste im Land bin oder der Reichste. Jeder kriegt es und es besteht auch kein Zwang dafür, was wiederzugeben, zu arbeiten oder so. Das ist mal die Basisdefinition, worüber wir reden. Um es auch konkret zu machen, in Luxemburg würde das heißen, und da bin ich gleich bei dem Thema, was ist es nicht? In Luxemburg, wenn es unter 2000 € wäre, wäre es kein bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen. Aus welchem Grund? Weil aus europäischer Definition von Armutsrisiko 60% Median wird definiert. Das ist in Luxemburg mittlerweile, also 2018, wäre das leicht über 2000 €. Wir werden auch über Bewusstsein und Wille reden. Zunächst Thema Inklusion, was wir heute haben. Die Menschen sind wertvolle Wesen. Inklusion, auch finanzielle Inklusion, muss man wundern, ist Inklusion überhaupt notwendig? Was ist überhaupt Inklusion? Warum soll ich jemand, der nicht fähig ist zu arbeiten oder der keine Lust hat, warum soll ich den inkludieren? Die Frage ist, wollen wir das? Ich behaupte ja, ich will jeden inkludieren, weil ich sage, jeder hat Fähigkeiten. Das ist also eine Bewusstseinsfrage. Bin ich mir dessen bewusst oder glaube ich, es gibt schwächlinge, faule und es gibt gute, gescheite, reiche und das sind die Guten und die anderen schleppen wir halt durch oder auch nicht. Ich sage, es ist eine menschliche Notwendigkeit, alle Fähigkeiten, die am Erden bestehen, zu nutzen und wenn sie nicht nutzbar sind, sie aktivieren, so zu aktivieren, dass sie nutzbar werden. Und die paar, die dann noch überhaupt keine Lust haben, die können wir auch mit durchziehen. Das tun wir sowieso, egal welches System wir haben. Ich habe geschrieben, integrale Sichtweise. Normalerweise ist die Bewusstseinsfrage in der Psychologie die, man kann die Welt verschieden sehen. Man kann sehen, man kann die Probleme lösen, indem man einem dem anderen den Kopf einschlägt, der Stärkste wird gewinnen. Dann kann man eher so im Laufe der menschlichen Entwicklung, dass man sagt, na, es gibt eine Moral. Die Kirche sagt, das ist gut, das ist böse, das darfst du nicht, tu, was die Eltern sagen. Das ist eine andere Bewusstseinsperspektive. Dann gibt es die sagt, wir sehen das viel liberaler, der am meisten leistet. Der soll am weitesten vorankommen, der soll möglichst viel haben. Man kann auch sagen, ich bin mehr ein Grüner, der sagt, wir inkludieren alles von der Pflanze bis zu Menschen und wir wollen doch gut zusammenleben. Aber die integrale Sichtweise, die sagt, das ist alles richtig. Alle diese Sichtweisen haben ihren berechtigten Wert. Wir inkludieren alle und nutzen jeden da, wenn es zur rechten Zeit am rechten Platz. Ich meine, ich kann dafür sein, für Pazifist zu sein und sagen, der viel leistet, soll viel leisten. Wenn mich aber ein starker Bär angreift, habe ich die Möglichkeit wegzulaufen oder wenn ich kämpfen muss, mit Aggressivität zu kämpfen. Das ist bewusstseinsmäßig zwar ein niedriges Niveau, aber vielleicht in dem Moment das Richtige, wenn ich überleben will. Menschen sind von der Psychologie her gesehen auch nehmende oder bedürftige Wesen. Die brauchen was. Immer Willenskraft. Jeder, der arbeitet, tut was und wir tun kaum was für uns selber. Das meiste tun wir, konsumieren wir, kaufen wir, weil andere es geschaffen haben. Also das Thema Wirtschaft ist für mich erst hat mit Profit überhaupt nichts zu tun. Aus was besteht die Wirtschaft? Für mich eigentlich aus zwei Dingen. Die Natur, die können wir transformieren, die können sie benutzen, wir können sie ausbeuten, je nachdem, wie man da herangeht. Und das zweite sind die menschlichen Fähigkeiten. Die kleiner, größer sind, die sind sehr verschieden. Je besser wir die koordinieren, umso besser haben wir gute Basis für die Wirtschaft. Ebenso mit der Natur. Wenn wir sie erhalten, haben wir in Zukunft mehr Möglichkeiten zu wirtschaften. Da geht es also, jeder tut was und das Geld kommt erst ins Spiel als Hilfskonstrukt. Wenn der eine, der produziert etwas, eine Hose, die kann ich ein Jahr lang tragen, wenn ich das mit einem Brötchen tausche, der Bäcker, dem seine Brötchen sind übermorgen kaputt, also brauchen wir irgendetwas, um das auszugleichen, zu messen, also da ist Geld als Hilfskonstrukt sehr wertvoll. Die Menschen nehmen aber nicht nur, sie geben auch, sie sind soziale Wesen. Die Menschen waren früher eher in Luxemburg vor 100, 150 Jahren waren Bauern,
die haben produziert, was sie gegessen haben mit ihren Familien. Sie haben noch ein bisschen am Markt getauscht, wenn ein bisschen mehr da war. Aber es war nicht so wie heute, wo die Weltwirtschaft einer Avis auf den anderen angewiesen ist, wird produziert über die ganze Welt. Ich habe 1 Million. Was heißt das? Ich nehme eine Flasche, die besteht aus Plastik, Papier, Farbe, Chemikalien, Plastikdeckel, manchmal Metalldeckel. Da behaupte ich, da hat die halbe Menschheit dran gearbeitet, direkt und indirekt. Plastik muss der Öl aus der Erde, Papier muss ein Baum gefällt werden. Für den Baum zu fällen brauche ich eine Axt. Für den Baum zu transportieren brauche ich ein Auto, der auf und braucht Reifen. Der Fahrer darf nicht nackt fahren, sonst wird er verhaftet, also brauche ich Kleider. Er muss ernährt werden und das bei jedem kleinen Teilchen so. Wenn man das also weiterdenkt, hat die halbe Menschheit an dieser Flasche mitgearbeitet. Und da ich ja ein Konsument bin, habe ich ein egoistisches Interesse, dass das auch noch morgen möglich ist. Also soll ich nicht die Leute rausschmeißen, sondern möglich machen, dass sie das weiter produzieren und vielleicht sogar besser oder mehr. Die Menschen sind aber nicht nur, dass sie sagen, ich will überleben, ich will was zu essen haben, ich will ein bisschen Wärme, ich will ein bisschen Sicherheit. Dann kommt, ich will ein bisschen Soziales, wie ich vorher gesagt habe, ich will dazugehören, ich will auch eine Anerkennung, manchmal eine Medaille oder ein Lob. Nein, ich will etwas tun, wo ich sehe, das ist für mich etwas Richtiges. Dann gibt es auch den Fehler, den ich eingebaut habe, zu sehen, dass die Leute merken, ja, dann merke ich immer, wer merkt, dass da ein Fehler steht. Damit die Leute nicht, damit ich genau weiß, wer schaut und wer schaut nicht. Also die Frage der Sinnsuche. Die Menschen haben also diese Grundbedürfnisse und ein höheres Bedürfnis ist, wenn man ernährt ist und man gehört dazu, jetzt will ich was Besonderes tun. Etwas, was für mich das Richtige ist. Das ist das Gegenteil der Grundängste. Die Menschen, das sage ich als Psychologen, haben 3 Grundängste. Sie wollen überleben, Angst vor Krankheit und Tod. Sie haben Angst, allein zu sein. Leute sprechen mit mir, aber keiner interessiert sich für mich. Ich bin allein, das ist dann schrecklich. Und das Dritte ist, es macht nichts mehr einen Sinn. Und so ist es, der Mensch auf der guten Seite sagt, ich bin gesund, ich gehöre dazu und ich tue was ich richtig finde. Und auf dieser Skala gibt es sehr wenige, die wirklich Schmarotzer, die müssen wir sozial erhalten. Denen sollen wir Grundeinkommen geben und die tun ja nichts. Das sage ich sogar, weil ich sage, jeder hat eine Fähigkeit. Stellen Sie sich den vor, der am Bahnhof liegt, so morgens, wenn der Banker wenn der dann mit der Bahn fährt, rauskommt, der liegt da so halb in seiner Kopse mit einer Flasche Wein und der arbeitet doch. Der Banker schaut weg, nimmt seinen Koffer und geht noch schneller zur Bahn. Also das ist das Antibeispiel, was zeigt, auch der tut was. Wenn der Banker sagt, ja, und dafür soll der bezahlt werden, sage ich, den Banker, das kannst du ja tauschen. Das wird er wahrscheinlich nicht tun. Der liegt wahrscheinlich. Also da geht es um, was ist nützliche Sozialarbeit? Die Sozialarbeiter bei uns kontrollieren die Leute, damit sie diesen RME oder heute kriegen dieses Geld, haben sie einen Partner, haben sie keinen, wie leben sie, verstecken sie kein Geld. Das kostet in Deutschland, kostet Hartz IV, habe ich geschaut, vor ein paar Tagen, wie 2018 6,5 Milliarden Kontrolle. Administratives Geld kostet es, um dieses Hartz IV laufen zu lassen. In Luxemburg habe ich die Zahl nicht. Aber eine Sozialarbeit statt zu kontrollieren, sollte den Leuten helfen, kreativ zu werden. Sie nicht entmutigen durch Kontrolle, sondern was kannst du? Da ich ja meine, jeder kann was. Das durch Weiterbildung, wenn der sein ganzes Leben nichts gemacht hat, niemand folgt ihm, am Arbeitsamt steht er da, sogar manchmal im Regen draußen, oder die Familie hat nie was gearbeitet, den muss ich aktivieren. Dafür brauche ich einen Profi, der dem sagt, du könntest das. Das braucht eine Zeit. Über Beziehung kann man das erreichen. Ich habe in dem Bereich gearbeitet. Die meisten sind erreichbar, wenn man sich direkt die richtigen Mittel gibt, letztlich den Menschen zu aktivieren, kreativ und tätig zu werden. Manche machen es aus sich selbst, manche brauchen die Hilfe. Und die paar Prozent, ich sage jetzt 5, die einfach nicht arbeiten wollen, die stören doch nicht. Was ist denn, wenn ein paar Leute nur Fischen geben, nachher haben die zu viel gefischt und sie auch noch verschenkt? Die Profiteure, die Profite ziehen aus dem ganzen System, die braucht das System eigentlich nicht. Und wofür braucht man die? Die einfach da sind, um nichts zu tun, in ihr Kapital, aber in einer gewissen Größe wächst von selbst. Sie müssen, da alles, was sie arbeiten müssen, sie müssen Angst um ihr Kapital haben, aber das müsste allgemein sehr wenig. Geld ist, behaupte ich, Bewusstsein. Das ist ein Privileg privater Banken, die geben einen Kredit, schreiben es in den Computer und schon haben sie Geld geschaffen. Sie müssen zu einige Prozent oder in wirklichem Geld in irgendeinem Tresor haben, aber die meisten haben das dem nichts geschaffen. Fiat, wie das heißt. Warum muss das eine private Firma können? Warum macht das nicht die Zentralbank? Die Zentralbank könnte ja Geld schaffen und sich nicht überverschulden bei privaten Banken, sondern das selber haben. Dann müsste man natürlich Rahmenbedingungen schaffen, dass die Banken nicht immer mehr Geld produzieren, die verschiedene Könige immer mehr drucken lassen. Man könnte das ja am Gesetz, an wirtschaftliche Fakten orientieren. Wenn die Wirtschaft wächst, darf man mehr Geld rausgeben und man kann das irgendwie steuern, dass er jetzt nicht steuerbar ist, ob schon Zentralbanken das Geld einfach nur kreieren und so viel geschaffen haben wie kaum je zuvor. Und die Spekulation, die hat ja in der Wirtschaft eigentlich nichts zu suchen, außer dass sie auf Kosten von anderen Leuten ist. Das ist sozial für die Allgemeinheit eigentlich nichts, was von Wert ist. Da ist die Frage, bin ich für Gemeinwohl? Ist das Gemeinwohl interessant, wenn jeder mit seinem besten Können mitarbeitet, der eine mehr, der andere weniger? Ich möchte auch nicht das Thema vorgehen, ist das Geld, was wir haben, was wert? Nach meiner Erkenntnis sind 95% oder ähnliche Prozentzahlen, das Geld ist überhaupt nicht mehr an die Wirtschaft gebunden. Das ist rein eine Denkblase, eine Spekulationsblase, hat aber mit Wirtschaft nichts zu tun, außer dass es anerkannt wird, solange das System funktioniert. Wirtschaft kann ein Geschenk sein. Es ist zuerst mal alles Reichtum, was wir haben, ist eine Verteilungsfrage. Ich bin nicht dafür, dass jeder gleich viel kriegt, wo wir sein verteilen durch die Zahl der Menschen. So funktioniert es, glaube ich, nicht. Aber wichtig ist die Idee, die Natur, die draußen ist. Die hat der liebe Gott oder der Urknall oder wer auch immer hingesetzt und es der Menschheit geschenkt. Bitte, wirtschafte, macht's was draus. Wenn ich aus der Mutter krieche bei der Geburt, dann habe ich Fähigkeiten. Der eine ein bisschen mehr, der andere ein bisschen weniger. Nützlich oder weniger nützlich. Aber die Mutter hat doch die Visakarte dafür nicht eingesteckt. Das kommt umsonst auf die Welt. Und schon haben wir die zwei Faktoren, die ich vorher genannt habe, die die Wirtschaft herstellen. Beide sind Geschenke von Natur, Gott, was auch immer, aber nicht von irgendeinem Menschen. Also ist das Natürlichste zu schenken. Und damit jeder mitschenken kann, ist das Beste, das zu ermöglichen. Ich habe ein Grundeinkommen, ich habe weniger Ängste, ich muss mich nicht mehr verkaufen, ich bin nicht mehr abhängig von jemandem, sondern ich kann mitspielen. Und jeder Egoist ist froh, dass ich auch vielleicht das produziere, was ich dann für mich benutzen kann. Das ist also eine Art Kredit. Wir haben ja von Krediten vorher gehabt, die kriege ich bedingungslos. Hier, mach was. Und da ich glaube, die meisten gesunden Menschen haben Interesse an sozial zu sein und sinnvoll zu sein, werden sie es tun. Dieser Kredit ist ein Gewinn von vornherein. Was ist es nicht? Das wäre das Thema. Es ist keine Sozialmaßnahme. Das heißt, es sind, wenn man so liest, bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen ist nur für Leute, die fangen mal an mit den sozial Schwachen. Dann habe ich das überhaupt nicht verstanden. Es geht darum, dass jeder einfach ohne Angst zu haben mitspielen kann. Und da hat mein Besitz nichts zu tun. Es ist einfach für mich, wie ich vorher gesagt habe, jeder hat einen Gewinn dran, wenn möglichst viele mitspielen, also Win-Win-Situationen. Es soll auch kein Zusammenlegen von Sozialmaßnahmen sein, damit ich als Staat Geld spare, also eine neoliberale Maßnahme, wie gesagt, ich kann noch anderen Zahlen wie über 2000, wenn die einen Vorschlag machen, wo es sein soll. Und ich sage nicht, das soll von heute auf morgen eingeführt werden, braucht natürlich einen längeren Zeitraum, bevor das geht. Es ist auch kein Gratisgeld. Gratis umsonst gibt es eigentlich in Definition von gratis nichts. Auch die Natur, die geschenkt ist, will gepflegt werden. Die Fähigkeiten, die ich habe, die wollen gefördert werden. Das ist beides nicht gratis. Es geht um Integration, Menschenwürde, weniger Angst, weniger Abhängigkeit, hat mit Geld also mal zunächst gar nichts zu tun. Das ist es also. Es ist eine Bewusstseinsfrage, es ist im Kopf. Kann ich wesensgemäß denken? Oder denke ich wie die anderen, denke ich wie die Bank, denke ich wie der Mainstream, denke ich wie die Profiteure, die natürlich großes Interesse haben, so weiter zu denken. Wenn ich richtig denke, dann ist es nur eine Willensfrage. Ich muss wollen. Ich muss die Verteilung so wollen, dass sie uns alle nützt und dass wir uns gegenseitig unterstützen kann. So ist mein Schluss Inklusion. Ein bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen kann ein basisfinanzielles Inklusionsinstrument sein, wenn wir es richtig denken. Wenn wir das nicht tun, lassen wir es lieber bleiben. Vielen Dank. Ich war nicht in der Zeit. So if you have a question in English or en français, je peux répondre aussi en français ou en anglais.
Let's imagine this would be implemented here in Luxembourg or in Europe. And let's say it's programmable money, so some form of digital money. At some point, it would hit some foreign currency. So, and then you would have an exchange rate, and you would have, the market would determine how much that is worth. So let's assume the euro is around there for a while. So how would this integrate, and how would that compare? Because in some form, it is still perceived as being free money in a sense, and it must have some certain value. The value is going to be determined actually how other currencies see it at that point in time when actually the market hits it and the price definition takes place.
For me, the main value is what I said is what nature can give us, how much we can take from it and our capacities. But concerning the actual system, not the whole world will have basic income from one moment to another. I believe it takes time, as I said. It might even take a generation, because to think differently is probably one of the most hardest things. I can understand, I take it because it's sympathetic also, but so it takes time. But we could start, for example, with a local currency like the one Max is presenting and say, in Beckerich, people get a basic income in BP. Let's see how does this evolve. Is this we could have more local currency? And do we get having one currency or another? I think then we can be creative again and find a solution if we think it right. Because everything is there to implement it. If it's not being able to implement in the system, I would say the system is sick. And since we are a big organism where we are a cell of it, if the system is sick, okay, the cells will die too. So we need healthy cells, and let's start with healthy cells to make the system more healthy again. Otherwise, we in a system that's not surviving. That can't survive.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, next we have Alexander Mastelma from University of Amsterdam. I was in a conference in April, was it, yeah? April in Amsterdam. I was quite impressed by the talk he gave there, and so that's why I invited him here, because also quite relevant to this little conference. Thank you very much.
Okay, so my name is Alex. I'm a tutor and researcher at the University of Amsterdam, and I'll be giving a slightly different talk from the ones you've been having so far. This is a talk about universal basic income and job guarantee. Both policies tend to be viewed as competitors, as a solution for various kinds of social problems, right? So, for instance, inequality, poverty, or unemployment in particular. And I will focus on the unemployment aspect in particular for this presentation. The presentation itself comes from a paper that I'm working on with Dr. Enzo Rossi. It's a political theory type of paper, so as I go through the various steps, it's quite packed, so to say, and as I go through the various steps, it will look like I'm solving a puzzle, right? So for this to work, I really need your undivided attention, so to say. But I promise, at the very end, you'll know a little bit more about both policies, and you'll feel a bit satisfied, just because it's like solving a puzzle in that sense. Oh, I need the clicky. Okay, so the two policies, universal basic income is a periodic payment, delivered to all on an individual basis unconditionally, so without any means test or a work requirement. Everybody just gets the equivalent of a living wage on a, say, monthly basis from the government without asking any questions. The alternative to this, for tackling unemployment, for instance, is a job guarantee. A job guarantee is a policy that guarantees all citizens who want to work but are involuntarily unemployed. So they want to work, but either they can't work or there are no jobs available. That the government commits itself to always guarantee a government job. Right? So those are two policies. And I'll be focusing in particular with how they deal with problems of unemployment. Right? Yeah. But the problem between the advocates of these two policies is that proponents of UBI happen to be predominantly philosophers, and proponents of GG happen to be predominantly economists, right? And as you might know, both of those fields sort of speak different languages, and they often talk past each other. So the first goal of my presentation is to clarify the normative and non-economic debate between UBI and GG, right? What are the various components, not about feasibility or anything like that, that is coming in our next presentation with Alex again, but more about what are the ways in which both of these policies will solve certain societal issues related to unemployment. And I will do that by focusing on a very specific exchange between Dr. Pavlina Chernieva, who is a big defender of job guarantee, and Dr. Guy Standing, who's a big advocate of UBI. And he's actually presenting right now in Amsterdam at the UBI March. Right? But the second goal the way I'll sort of accomplish the first goal entirely is not just to look at this exchange, but also provide the best version of a job guarantee, right? There is a certain version of a job guarantee that is spoken about by philosophers, or Guy Standing in particular. I will present the best version that we could have in that sense, and then see how it stands to criticisms. And then finally, after all that is done, I will develop an additional deeper criticism of JG that potentially might lend support for UBI on JG's own terms. Yeah? Yes. Okay, so Guy Standing starts off his presentation, or starts off his paper by telling us about two different kinds of conceptions of rights to work, right? So there's a really wide conception of the right to work, that is a right to practice different forms of worthy activities that guarantee a good quality of life, whether this is remunerated or not, right? So this is a very wide conception of the right to work. Then he contrasts this to what we probably have more closely, which is the right to employment. And that is to have a right to a job, its free choice, to just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment, right? And he thinks, as we've gone through history, because of the way the labor market has changed over time, that we're going through a progression from the sort of narrow definition of the right to work as right to employment to the right to work more widely conceived. But then he tells us, notice, if you look at the world, if we actually have this, and you look at the world, most people simply need to have a job to make a living, right? So it's really strange to think of a right whereby rights are for the purposes of advancing and defending human freedom, when the right to employment under capitalism looks more like a duty to work with additional protections, right? That's sort of the thought. Now, Guy Standing's solution to this, before that, Standing also tells us about two additional empirical concerns. Again, we look at the world, notice, a lot of people generally dislike the jobs that they have, right? And they only do them to make a living, right? We all know, we're really unhappy about Mondays, and we really look forward to the weekend sort of story, right? And then the second empirical concern is that jobs never actually capture all useful work that's being performed, right? There's a lot of care work, there's a lot of volunteer work that is being performed that is simply not paid for, right? And he thinks that precarious jobs make the situation worse, as you're paid for less essential work that needs to be performed. So those are two empirical concerns. Please keep them at the back of your head, because we'll be coming back to them as the story progresses. Okay, so his argument for UBI is that the way we resolve these two problems is to genuinely embrace the right to work. The right to work as the right to practice different forms of work activities that guarantee a good quality of life, whether remunerated or not. And we do that, we have this problem that, we have this concern that under capitalism, the right to work is closer to a duty to work, right? And he thinks if we give everybody a UBI, everybody will be empowered to say no to any kind of job, right? In that situation, you no longer have the duty to work per se, right? And what you can do instead is fulfill precisely the right to work as it stands there. You can practice any kind of activities for the betterment of your own quality of life or those of others. If you happen to have been caring for children, you can continue doing that, but don't be worried about getting a job, for instance. That's sort of the goal. And the way this is done is that UBI decouples making a living from a job and delivers the right to work. Right? Now we move on to a job guarantee, and we'll talk a lot more about that. So according to Standing, a job guarantee doesn't actually deliver the right to work. Right? According to him, a job guarantee doesn't offer a wide choice of JG jobs. You might think that's just general skepticism of how many jobs the government is interested in providing to you, right? And the main problem here is that if a worker refuses a job, they're not involuntarily unemployed anymore. If you're not involuntarily unemployed, you forfeit any kind of benefits, right? On this view, a job guarantee is actually closer to a work for a program, right? And a JG not only, as much as it maintains the right to employment as it is, this sort of JG actually weakens the right to employment because there's an additional way in which workers need to work to make a living. Yeah. Okay. Now, Cherneva tells us, no, you're terribly wrong. A JG program is not a work for a program. Benefits are not tied to participation in the labor market. You will still get benefits regardless if you're working or not, right? Or regardless if you refuse the JG job, right? And on that account, JG delivers the right to employment with the benefit of additional public sector jobs. So it improves it in that sense. Yeah. Now, I think JG can do much better than just fulfill the right to employment in that sense. And we'll give them that benefit. So, the best version, what would be the best version of a job guarantee, right? So now we sort of saw the touching points between UBI and JG. And now we'll try to stretch it as far as possible and see where the similarities and differences are with regards to the right to work. Yeah? So JG jobs pay a living wage, provide good working conditions. JG jobs train workers to then be able to take better non-JG jobs. They can go back to the private sector with a better job afterwards. And are diverse enough to accommodate various workers' needs, right, at different skill levels and so on. Right? If this is what JG jobs are, then, oh, and finally, they also target the fulfillment of various community needs. So they're actually useful, right? They're meaningful in that sense. Now, if workers can always take on a JG job, then they are empowered to say no to bad jobs with precarious working conditions, right? No. Do you notice the similarity with UBI in that sense? There's so many opportunities for you to do work with the government, or you become better and can return to the private sector for a better job, that you can just say no to bad jobs, right? So that's sort of the thought. If that's always true, and workers can always take a better government job than the ones provided by the private sector, then employers must improve jobs to attract their workers, right? They will have to do all this bunch of stuff just to compete with what the JG a job guarantee can provide. Yeah. Yeah. So that's sort of the view. Now, you might notice that a job guarantee on this version is can accommodate a right to work as long as it can provide such a variety of good jobs that it actually empowers workers and there's genuine free choice to pursue various kinds of activities that are useful and meaningful, right? And improves your quality of life. But notice, relative to UBI, JG needs to do a lot more to fulfill the rights to work in that sense. It's a lot more demanding for a JG program to fulfill the right to work on that account, right? It's also empowering, right? Now, but let's look at this, but before continuing that, does a job guarantee resolve standing security concerns? Well, people generally dislike their jobs and do them solely to make a living. JG jobs look pretty good. The market will have a lot more better jobs, right? For this part, precarious jobs makes this worse. Workers would be able to refuse bad precarious jobs. Right? Jobs never captured all useful work. That's true. How do we resolve this? The government targets the fulfillment of various community needs. Various things that the private sector simply did not fulfill for communities because it was deemed unprofitable, will now be fulfilled by JG jobs. So you can see how, while UBI approaches the right to work by simply embracing it and allowing people to say no to all jobs, JG pushes forward the right to employment by expanding it as much as possible, right? And in that way, if it's expanded well enough, it can come really close to a minimum of the right to work in that sense. Yeah. Now again, it seems that JG jobs have a much higher burden to fulfill their promise of the right to work, right? Why might we prefer JG over UBI in that case? So, on the first account, yeah. So it might just be the case that people do not just need a job, but people actually want a job to make it. There's something empowering about the simple act of having a job for people, right? And state institutions can sort of direct individual action to be able to fulfill various sort of collective needs. It's not like UBI can't do that, but that's a necessary component of a JG, right? But this final thing, UBI sort of can't do, right? UBI literally says, don't worry about doing jobs. Here's your money. Do useful work as much in the ways that you deem fit. That's sort of the thought. Yeah. Now, how can we respond to this sort of thing? Oh, I'm skipping this. Do I have time?
8 minutes.
Okay. Okay. I'll actually do this. So, in order to respond to this criticism, in order to critique this, we need to change perspective a little. Yeah. So far, we were looking at whether a job. So this is a really good job, right? Pays well, so on and so forth, and it's also meaningful, right? But notice that this is very much from the perspective of the state, right? The way that JG jobs should be funded is various local communities are asked to identify various kinds of needs. They submit a project to the government goes, cool, here's some money, and jobs are funded that way. Right? That in a very simplified sense, of course. Yeah? That's a very top-down view. Now, I will contend on the extent to which these kind of jobs can be meaningful for the worker. They can be really good jobs and they can be really useful jobs, but are they meaningful? And here's the distinction. Right? Oh. So people like jobs, and they're meaningful in the sense that they fulfill various kinds of real community needs. These are identified by the communities themselves and approved by the state. Right? Yeah. But what if we look at the worker's perspective? You can imagine for yourself, what if we look from the worker's perspective? You can imagine a job that is good and meaningful in the sense that it fulfills various community needs, but that is boring and repetitive from the perspective of the worker for the tasks that you need to do in the job. It'll be a good job, but it won't be meaningful in the right way. Yeah? You can imagine for yourself a GG job, a GG office job, for instance, that has all of this, fulfills a community need by delivering foodstuffs, for instance, to local communities that need them, but the job just happens to be awfully repetitive and very, non-meaningful in that sense, right? The thought is, and all I'm trying to say, is that we can't be entirely sure that the GG job will be meaningful from the perspective of the work, right? Precisely because of this difference of perspective. GG comes from the top, and the worker's perspective sort of comes from the bottom. Now keep that at the back of your heads, and we'll do something else. We'll return to our initial contention that people do not just need a job, but people want a job to make a living. Yeah? And the way we'll do that is that we'll point out a certain category of beliefs. These are known as ideological beliefs. Ideological beliefs tend to be embedded in social practices, right? So you have this expectation you do, for instance, you wake up every morning at 8 o'clock and by 9 o'clock you need to be at work, right? It's really strange when somebody approaches you and tells you, well, you know, you don't actually have to be doing the job so soon, right? It's very crudely put, of course. Another aspect of ideological beliefs is that they happen to be resistant to rational revision, right? While you might sit down and be given new evidence to think something differently, right? Just because it's related to who you are, you might have an emotional response and attachment that doesn't allow you to give up that belief, right? So that's sort of the thought. Yeah, and if we look at the belief that people want a job in particular to make a living, yeah, I've said this. You might notice that the jobs are very closely connected to people's identities, right? It's the first party question. You go to a party, you're having a drink. First question you ask by strangers, what do you do? Have any of you ever had the instance where you had to tell that person that you're unemployed? Oh, actually everybody's employed. Yeah.
Even if I'm unemployed, I have lots of things to do.
Yeah. But
When I'm unemployed.
yeah, but usually the question tends
When
to
I'm without income.
yeah, when you're without income. Exactly. Okay. So I want to say that on top of all of these goods of work, the job can be really good and meaningful in the sense that it fulfills various community needs. But there's an additional sense in which people with a job are good people, and people without a job, with no job, are bad people. Okay? You know how unemployed people can be broadly stigmatized, especially those that accept various kinds of public funds to, like unemployment benefits and so on, to survive, so to say. So that's sort of the thought. Now, it might just be the case that people wanting a job to make a living is a type of adaptive preference, right? There's this old story from Sour Grapes about a fox that approaches a tree, right? And on top of this tree there are grapes, right? And the fox is really hungry and wants those grapes, and it jumps up, tries to climb the tree and can't reach those grapes. Eventually gives up and goes, I didn't actually want those grapes. They are sour, and leaves. The fox had the fox noticed that when it had a preference, its preference was narrow, its scope of action was narrowed down by its abilities, and it adapted its preferences to those situations, right? It might just be the case that we have a similar thing going on with jobs. Over time, preferences may have changed to reflect a narrowed set of options. Right? I will say a lot more about this. But the good life nowadays usually involves a job that you like. Okay? And if it's the case that we happen to live in a society where you need a job to make a living, perhaps us wanting a job to make a living is just an adaptive preference in that sense. We can never be sure, right? Unless we're outside that sort of arrangement. But that implies that there was once a time that we did not need a job to make a living, nor did we want a job to make a living, right? And there's this story, it's reasonably known that it's known that Victorian aristocrats disliked any kind of work, right? Higher people in Greek society also disliked any kind of work, right? And this brings us to a paradigmatic story of the origins of capitalism, right? Feudal peasants worked just enough to feed their families, right? They didn't have a 9 to 5, they just worked enough. Their lives weren't great, but that's not the point, right? I'm talking in particular about instances of them having jobs per se, right? They often made a living by working land that was often held in common, right? No individual can go, that's mine, people just sort of use that land. Right? And the story goes that this commonly held land becomes divided up, it becomes parceled, right? And comes to be owned, and comes to be the individual private property of a small group of individuals who happen to be well positioned in society at the time, right? There's the people who used to use this common land to give enough to have their families, happens to be without property there. And the only thing they could sell is their labor to survive, right? Happens say, selling their labor, selling their labor usually involves providing various kinds of services for this privileged group. Over time, this practice became standardized as a job, right? So that's kind of the story. People didn't always want jobs, nor did they need jobs per se. So where does this leave us? Under capitalism, a job becomes the main means to make a living. It may be the case that people have adapted their preferences to reflect this transition. We cannot show this per se, right? But we can doubt it enough that we want a way to guarantee this, right? Powerful interests also happen to maintain this. Employers really like that there are large groups of really willing workers to perform their work. Individual workers also benefit from this. They get a living, they're motivated to work, and they earn the status of the job that they do. Now, where does this leave us? We started off with the belief that people want a job to make a living, right? So we can't be sure that, remember the worker's perspective, that JT jobs will be meaningful from the worker's perspective. Another thing that we can't be sure about anymore is that people want to make a job to make a living, right? Just because you happen to be in this kind of arrangement, right? So one way that a JG can be more sure to deliver the right to work and to alleviate these two doubts happens to be UBI. If you give people a UBI, workers can genuinely say no to all jobs that are not meaningful from their perspective. And we can be sure that when people don't need to work to make a living, that those who do actually want to make a living. Thank you, hope you enjoyed that and that left you a bit satisfied.
Thank you. I think we'll skip the questions because we're
Yeah.
late.
If somebody will pass questions,
There'll
I'm
be
here.
a discussion at the end. If we need to. Next, Alex Wallon, let's set up the. So, Alex works in Treasury at BIL, Banque Internationale Luxembourg, and it's a sort of surprise to see a man like this speak about UBI because he's dealing with billions, literally billions of euros, I guess every day, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
So,
So that's why I put it at the very first way. Yes, I'm working at BIT, I'm still in the Treasury Department. And certain things have been said, but I know them from my personal experience. And this comes to it, I speak in my own proper name. Maybe put for the connection. In 2009, I started together with Alfred, the UBI initiative in Luxembourg. And I'm more or less considered the philosopher in the band. And anyway, in 2008, I asked for negative rates. So why do I come this? First was the title should be a banker's view, financing UBI a banker's view. But to me, it's not a money issue, and really here on the same level that Alfred says about it has to do something about consciousness. And finally, because it's not a money issue, is which one? Well, it's not a money issue just simply because money is something we have created wealth since 3,000 years, and we are all standing on the shoulders of giants. If you recognize that, you have a different perspective of the economy. So, and here it comes to saying no one gets rich alone. So that we have amassed a tremendous amount of wealth over the last centuries. Even John Maynard Keynes, well, amongst others, said that if the productivity continues the same way in 1928, in his essay Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, if the productivity continues that way as he predicted in 1928, we would be working, having good standard of living, maximum 15 hours a week, maximum. His calculations were, we made a mistake, productivity grew even faster. So we should be working 10 hours a week maximum. But as and then why do I say money is not an issue? Well, here is again, because we have the wealth, we have the wealth is there, and it's only a question of distribution, how we distribute, which are the rules or our I would say our game or the rules of the game, how to distribute it. Like in Monopoly, I like that. Okay, everybody has played Monopoly. Well, now if you are born in this society, all the fields are taken, and those guys who play longer, they have all the fields. So that extends comes to the point that the money is not an issue. The wealth is there. It's only how you distribute it and on which conditions. And here it comes to, for me, that's well, being in the bank. For me, it was my own conclusion, my private conclusion from basic income. It has nothing to do with money, because that's something, it's in our head. We have so many things we have heard today. It's in your mind. Money is only a credit. And that's how it's originated. Later I will show you how much money is there and how. But it's in our heads. Money is only it gives you an opportunity to buy some goods or services. But finally, in the original, the value is zero. Especially, let's see a crisis. That's what it's difficult to say because it's in our head. We cannot imagine crisis systems. Back in 2008, I experienced the crisis from our bank on personal level. And that's something, there you see, it's only figures on the computer. It can be solved with a flip. So if the central bank says, here you have it, then you have it. And the central banks can put so much money for the banks, not for you, not for us, unfortunately, not for us. They can put it on the account. And Alex, he asked me to serve different financing opportunities, and I said, why it's not an issue. I remember April 1st, 2011, we had a conference at the University of Luxembourg, and there was the guy from the Central Bank of Luxembourg. He made this calculation. Medium income, it's new 2013, where static even says 2,100 should be the minimum for Luxembourg. I put the numbers I put children only to 1,000. If you put that sum, you come to 30 billion, which is 66% of the total budget. Social Security is 47%, so it's more or less 10,000. But that's all pensions. That's well, I am benefiting as well from a scheme. So this will from the Social Security budget you cannot compensate it. But this one, if you do it that way, it's you just simply stop all discussion, and that's what very often at the beginning 10 years ago was no discussion at all, because with this amount not to do, and particularly everybody should receive. That's okay. Dead end discussion. You stop all the discussions. However, what they did, so in 2009, the discussion was, well, only lunatics think that, or philosophers, or psychologue, or idealists. But then comes that like Guy Standing, which, well, see, it started, the movement started, and finally they had, but I want to talk briefly about 4 experiments. Maybe Finland the last, Namibia, maybe for the amounts. But I would not go into detail. Namibia was something $100 Namibian dollars a day, at which time was 10 euros a month. And it happened to be a house in Namibia with 10 euros a month. You bought 10 liters of petrol. Okay, that means really not much. Kenya, they are doing the different field program, 2 years, 12 years, and no, but it's about $22, if I'm right, $22 a month. So below the poverty level. India was even less, $6.60 for adults and $3.30 for children. But all these 3 examples show you that what happens there, if you have UBI, it's minimal amount. For India, if you use that for general for all India, it's 3.5% of the GDP of India. It's ridiculous. And Namibia was even 2%. And low money. All the examples show that people, they have the right to do something. They decide something what they do. First of all, in Namibia and Kenya as well, they put the children into school. So they didn't go into the shops and drink alcohol. See, that means that's principle. If you give them people, if you trust them, they do something for themselves. And what else happens? You put money, and that's what it is. You put money into the economy. It gives purchasing power. So if they have money, decent friends, they can buy goods. So economic activity start. Well, the examples are too good, but Kenya, by the way, is not this done by the organization Give Directly. Never heard of it. It's sort of, they say they count. It's much better than giving money for development aid. Just if you give it to the people, they know the best way to do it, because that supports the local economy. Finland, that's the case of neoliberal society, because there you couldn't starve on it. 560 euros per month, below the poverty level, and only for unemployed. So the only good thing that obviously that example, well, didn't show any particular good news. The only thing is that some people, particular artists or celebrities, they said, well, they could take some job, and they didn't. So you didn't receive less aid money if you accepted another job. So you had the 560 euros were done unconditionally, and you could earn extra money. That's the only thing that the positive thing. Well, here I will not go maybe too much into it, because now we know that money is credit. I will show you only now here why money matters. It's really that if you grant credit to other, if you have the trust in the other one, even the neighbor I dislike, if I can give him that he can have a decent way of living, at least, yes, unconditionally that he can participate, then we are right, because why it matters. Here comes why it matters. For that was my conclusion, because now I'm going to the figures itself. These are figures from 18th of. Okay, well, from yesterday, 23rd of October, so 2 days ago. This is my daily work, part of daily work. That's sort of the figures which are on the central bank account, and it says in million. So we have 1,000. Yeah. Does it work? Yeah. Okay. These are current accounts for the banks. The banks, they have a dual system. You have the central bank money and you have commercial money. Yeah. These two do not intertwine. It's impossible. But yes, it's one way. It's only one way that you can have central bank money is by taking banknotes. That means these are money is sitting on the account and it's charged every day by 0.50%. So pumping money is not into the economy, it stays with the banks. So that's one thing. Secondly, every euro which is there on the current account and deposit facilities. So in total we have 1,800 billion euros. It's not millions. I made a calculation, maybe 1 billion euro, with the average rate of 1 million for a house in Luxembourg. You buy with 1 billion, you buy 1,000 houses. We're talking about 1,800 billion. So 118, yeah. 1.8 million houses. That's it's only sitting there, money. And this is only what you have on current accounts. That's why money is there. It can only be created by food. What else I would here add? It's just simply to show the balance sheet of the central bank of the ECB. Yeah, 5,000 billion euros. Yeah. Well, in billions don't care. 1 billion more or less. So in that, and that's what it is. But giving somebody 1,000 euros or 2,000 euros, it's not imaginable, because 2,000 euros everybody understands. 1,000 billions, no idea. I have no clue what it is. It's a figure. I took this because when you see 1,800 euros. 1,830 billion on the account, and you have 1,250 billion banknotes circulation. Divided by the people in Eurozone, 340 million means that everybody has 3,700 euros in the pocket. Every child, everybody. You have it? So it's getting more or less the system is getting out of loop. The acceleration, like in exponential function, but we have, exponential function is getting out of control. Because now we're adding more and more. And one thing is sure, everybody's the next, not crisis, I wouldn't say crisis, next Bereinigung.
Crisis.
Well, okay, next clearance or whatever. Correction. Either it will, consequences, or central banks just simply, a friend of mine, central banks, we just need to put it on, continue. And this is why it's, for me, important. We are in this situation, going up. I had some interesting graphs, but I couldn't put them into the slide, just showing that, Max knows Helmut His graphics are still available. He died, passed away 2 years ago. He nicely showed the potential increase. And we are now, starting 1950, we doubled every year the amount of debt every year, or the money at the same time. So we are now in phase 7, so it means we're at 128 times. And it goes only faster. Everybody who knows in exponential functions, the most important happens at the end. It goes so fast we don't even know it. Compared to, well, we should come somewhere to the, every living organism grows and then comes to the plateau. And that's what we need to find in, well, that's what was my idea on well, I will come afterwards to my proposal, well, not proposal, to my thought. That's what it is. I would say since 2002, more or less, I asked, that's the question I asked to a central bank in Switzerland, what do you think rates will become negative again in 2002? And he denied, but finally, well, it happened. However, at that time, since that we need to have, but the interest rates should be the same, like for me, like living organisms. They should be on negative territory. And for banks, it's negative rates are not bad. If you have a positive sloping curve of interest rates in negative territory, because then you make money. And it makes, particularly, what I say always, you should allow deposits at cooperative banks or cooperative housing or social goods at 0%, and all the others should. On that, while money, well, we said already, money never works. Have you tried ever to put $100 or €50 bill on the grass and moan it, or put it? Money doesn't work. It's only people. It's contract. The vision, what I said to put financing, well, I wouldn't go into details because figures are always hypotheses. The vision would be, well, Biki comes into play. Luxembourg it's an open economy. We have lots of frontalier, which makes it different. But you could just simply imagine we have the system in Luxembourg of the chèque service. That's creation of money. Some sort, yeah. Well, put it purchasing power. Put it that way. Well, just in that case, my suggestion would go having not a Beki but a Ziggy or Luxembourg Ziggy. So purchasing power given out from the government, not from the government, from ourselves to our community with a negative rate on it. So you have to spend the money. You have to spend the purchasing power, the tickets in Luxembourg, and you lose 1% per month. Just simply because what it is about, why this example and this one, what goes up must come down. In order to have a system to find just simply sort of the payments of UBI should flow back like a bus stop. But I didn't find the money should come back from some sort of system, particularly 1%, and where you know money every time when you spend money you pay VAT. So if you have increased the velocity, but because if you have money in your pocket, you lose every month 1%. What do you do? You spend. That's what it is. So obviously that's what it is. Okay, you could increase inflation should be attained because you have negative rates. And automatically negative rates make it more difficult than inflation increase. But it's really test period, and you could give it even to frontalier, but they have to spend it here in Luxembourg.
You mean that asset inflation, which we already see. That's the norm, it's a natural.
Yeah, okay. That's why my second proposal comes from it that you don't have any taxes more on work done by humans, maybe up to 250,000, and you tax only income without work. Leistungsloses Einkommen. Like Henry George, that he proposed. You tax all the sort of income of property rights which don't work, like real estate. No one works for the land. Like rent, no one works for it. No one works for dividends. No one works for it. It's only received because you have property rights. So far, the thing is, we have a big, huge problem with, we mix property rights and income on property rights. Yes, the property rights are sacrosanct, but the income, sorry, the income is not sacrosanct. You should pay because the property rights, they increase only in value because of infrastructure, because of the community who build it, who keeps it. So that's why here comes Henry George, 1873. He said at that time that the government can finance all his duties by just simply taxing economic rents, by taxing the income from which are, well, I would say, put it that way, by taxing, yes, well, the advantages of that the people have earned through their property rights, because the public keeps up infrastructure, has to put it, and the value is created by everybody. It should flow back. It's not taking money though, but it's sort of keeping up the amount running, and that's why my idea is that it should come the design that well, the money that goes up should come in. Here, well, obviously here, this example, I could as well use the blood system. If you have the body, it's important that every cell has, well, the blood goes everywhere that you can put some nourishment. Here, the same is everywhere. You need to have the water everywhere. That's what is currently now. If you look at the economic system, you have 2 billion. How many people who have not enough sufficient goods where we produce more? Basically, we create a disequilibrium based, I would say, to my experience, we come to a money system, where I would put it rather on the distribution of wealth, and some sort of the way we distribute wealth is man-made. So if it's man-made, we can change it. And I say every poverty we have, it's only relative. It's man-made. So we don't need to fight poverty. We should ask the right questions. And that comes because somebody said, on spaceship Earth, there are no passengers. We are all crew. And that's something sort of we have to think about on this page. And maybe UBI is right now not the right solution. Could well be. Because, but however, it asks the correct discussion, the question. It has to do about consciousness. And for me, my conclusion was, if the consciousness changes, probably we don't need UBI, because then it's normal that we don't leave somebody from our community without basic needs. And maybe last one, but if you want to do, if you want to do it, we find a way. If you don't want to, we find arguments. Why not? Thank you.
Max de Wörth, who is the coordinator of the Becky, which is Luxembourg's only local currency, the Becky. Okay.
So if you have, I think I don't need to introduce myself, you did it, so fine. So when we look at the approaches that are being done in microfinance so far, it's basically in financial inclusion. It's mostly microfinance and fintechs, which are quite new, which try to give easier access to bank accounts or payment systems. And in fact, the logic is to integrate the poor people into the global capitalism. And so, to me, this raises one main question: do we actually strengthen their local economies by integrating them into capitalism. And first of all, I would just to make this point as well. Maybe we also need to question our measurement methods. So we need to question our indicators of wealth. You need to know that even today, about 50% of world population still live from subsidiary agriculture. So they produce for themselves and they consume it themselves. And maybe they just, if they have too much, they just share it or give it away or whatever. And all of this, there's no money flowing. So they just produce it and consume it themselves. And this never shows up in any economical statistic. So it doesn't increase GDP, whatever. It just does not exist. I mean, it's a tragedy because our economic data are unable to even not only to explain but even to register the real economy of 50% of world population. So maybe we need to question those indicators, and that's why I wanted to put those pictures, because if you look at economical data, this guy, I don't know what he's doing exactly, maybe producing working food, he's just doing nothing, because it doesn't show up in any statistical economical data. And these guys who are destroying the rainforests, and they cut down the trees and sell them, well, once they sell them, they produce wealth. It shows up in GDP, etc. So they increase GDP by destroying it. And it's just not sustainable. I mean, what we are actually doing globally in this capitalist logic is we transform every natural richness that exists in the world into an abstract monetary richness, which simply means destroying natural richness. So, and we see that today, even people are out on the streets, young people are out on the streets criticizing that we don't do enough to fight climate change, etc. Some of them even say, okay, that's, well, most say that it's linked to our economic system, eternal growth that we want to have, and we just can't continue this. So why are we trying in financial integration to integrate even more people into the system and to make the system even bigger if you know that it's not sustainable? And isn't it ironic that the poor countries suffer most from global capitalism? They have the hardest burden. They suffer most from climate. I mean, I just put some things that this can continue. It's a very long list of all the inequalities. I think Alex showed it at the very beginning, the outflow of money that they have. And this is just one example. Take climate crisis. They suffer most from it. So it's a bit ironic to tell them, well, join our system and you will be fine, because it's the system that mostly was responsible for them being poor. And capitalism is basically a system of different power levels. And what could possibly be the best outcome if we integrate developing countries into global capitalism? What could be the best outcome for them? Well, it's just a power shift. I mean, they could become rich and we could become the poor people. This is on an individual basis, like on a global level. But there's no more overall benefit for all of us. And that's why this is a concept of information. It is not, but we need to maybe think in a different way. And we could have learned this before, because when we have a look at how IMF and World Bank, when in the 80s, especially and 90s, they granted credits to poor countries, well, besides the fact that were linked to very bad conditions for those countries, the idea, in fact, was to say that they should produce monocultures for exportation, so produce coffee, for instance, and sell it on the global market. So this would bring them foreign capital into their countries, and they would have a positive foreign trade balance, and they would be rich. The problem, though, was that they produced many countries started doing this because it was the World Bank who gave the advice to do so, and so prices fell. They produced a lot of coffee, and prices in the global market for coffee fell down, so they couldn't even pay back the credits they gave on this way. And anyway, if a single country has the idea to say, okay, we try to have a positive balance sheet, might be a good idea. We try to work for exportation and have a positive trade balance, might be fine. But for the World Bank to give this advice, it's just a strange idea because it's simply mathematically impossible for all the countries together to have a positive balance sheet. Someone needs to have a negative one, as long as we don't make trade with extraterrestrials. That would be possible. And then they remain with a debt and interests. And just to give you an idea, I mean, Alex did it before, but just to give you an idea, this is what the Nigerian president said, that they had borrowed up to 5 billion and they have paid 16 billion back. And now they're being said that they still need to pay 28 billion. And that's why he says, what is the worst thing in the world, I would say, is compound interest. So just to give you an idea of the injustice of the system, where we do some development aid, but on the other side, we are destroyed as well.
God, the mafia money lenders are so jealous now.
Okay. How much time do I have? Fine.
Sorry, 10 minutes.
Okay. Fine. So, and this is, I want to give you an example of, you wouldn't call this financial integration, but that's actually what happened. When the British colonizers went to Ghana, they introduced for the first time a national currency. And well, you might be astonished, but the Ghanaian people, they didn't need the British colonizers. They were fine. They were organized in rural communities, would mostly produce for themselves, consume for themselves, have little exchanges with neighboring communities, etc. So they were fine. But the British actually wanted them, they wanted to sell their products in Ghana, but mostly they also wanted the Ghanaian people to work for them. And usually they would do it by force, we know this, and it happened. But in this case, they were pretty smart, and they invented this first national currency. And together with this, they introduced a very small housing tax. So if you own the house, you would have to pay this tax. Even if this was a small cottage, you would have to pay this tax. So you had to find a way to earn some of this national currency. And you couldn't do it by just growing your garden and eat it yourself, or doing some, well, exchanging it with your neighbors maybe. So you needed to work for this national system in order to have this national currencies. And within a short period of time, by this way, the British managed to destroy those local communities, the local economy, by simply introducing this national currency that you would need to have in order to pay your taxes. And so new dependencies were created. Now, I also see one more threat to the development of these poor regions coming from the new fintechs. I mean, we've heard about the problems before. We know it might help them to have access to this market, etc. But when you look at, that's a fear I have. I can't prove this anyhow. But we know that companies like Amazon, Alibaba, etc., they are working on payment systems. And if you take the remittances that migrants that live here in Europe, in Western countries, that they make to their families back home, it's 2 to 3 times of development aid. So it's very important for these countries. And now if, for instance, someone like Amazon would manage to do a good payment system that would allow them to make the remittances at almost no cost, they might introduce incentives for people to spend the money again back in Amazon, like simply saying you can get the money for free on your account, but as long as you continue spending it in Amazon. But if you want to get it out, if you want to cash out, then we'll have a fee of 10% or whatever. And it will be catastrophic because no one else in the community of where this money goes will benefit from it. It will just be one person getting it and giving it back to Amazon. And all the other businesses around in this area will for sure never see this money. So it might be even, so these fintechs offering this payment access, or it might in the end be worsen the situation instead of improving it. So this is why local currencies or regional currencies might be an interesting thing to combine or to use in financial inclusion. And this is just to show you how Beki works. It's very simple. People can go at the bank and exchange their euros into Beki, and then they will go shopping with it. And the shops, they can change it back into euros, but then actually they would lose 5%. And this 5% is simply an incentive for them not to change it back. As long as they continue spending it locally in other businesses, they don't lose anything. And that's why they do it. So that's how you create this chain reaction of further local spendings, where a lot of, I mean, we can say today from our statistics that about one Beki circulates about 6 times before it's being changed back into euros. So if you spend 1 Beki, it creates turnover of 6 Beki. And that would be, for example, the difference from the money that you would send from Amazon account back to Amazon, where it's just one person having it. Here it's 6 people involved. We don't have this, and it has been explained before already, but this is how it looks concretely. So demurrage, this is meant to increase the speed of circulation of money. This is a Keen Power, that's local currency in Bavaria, and actually they lose their validity at certain periods, and you can only maintain the validity if you put these stamps on it, and they cost a little percentage of the bill. And so, of course, this is an incentive not to pay this and to spend it before. So this even increases circulation, just to say that again. So what regional currencies do, and why might they be interesting to be used in, well, financial inclusion, or maybe I shouldn't call it this way, but just to support the local community in poor areas. They, first of all, keep the money within the region, and it's the most important in this context, I think. And they circulate between the regional businesses, and they circulate faster. They're not being hoarded, which is important as well, because once you take money out of circulation, then, well, just there can't be any business done with it. And it doesn't make sense with local currency, especially as we've seen before, if you need to pay for it to hoard it. Or in the case of, like we have experienced with Beki, shops, the businesses, they just try to spend it as fast as possible to avoid to have too much and not to have to lose the 5%. Also, they do not increase inequality, because when you think of the example of the quotation from Obasanjo, the Nigerian president, that's where you see how much this standard currency create inequality. And for instance, with something like this, you might borrow this money to someone and be happy to get it back without any interest on it, because meanwhile you didn't need to pay for the how do you say, stickers? Stamps. Yeah, stamps. Yeah. So meanwhile you save that money, so you will be happy to get it back for just the same value without asking any interest. And the same with Beki. If there would be a shop that has too much of it, they might lend it to someone else, and by this way they don't need to change it into euros, they don't need to lose the 5%, so they might be happy to get back, maybe get it paid back their credit one by one in euros. They would have won 5% nevertheless, but there would be no interest. So they don't increase inequality. Also, they combine financial with ecological and social benefit. Of course, ecological benefits because we shorten transportation routes, we favor local commerce to global commerce, so we have reducing CO2, etc. Social benefits mostly because it creates reciprocal links, and even Alex's system does it even more. I mean, you can't get out of it. But regional currencies do this as well. We say that if everyone just buys online, where you just say anonymous, you never meet anyone. But if you go to the small businesses, etc., it's where people encounter. And especially, it creates links between businesses. They might change their providers, etc., and they are interested to find someone in the region where they can continue spending it, so it creates these social links. And that's how also it strengthens social cohesion and promotes social engagement. And I think this is not, we should not underestimate this when we talk about poor areas where everyone needs to see how to survive. I think this might be very important to give some hope. And the idea is not new. I'm not presenting a new idea. In fact, it's being done by Banco Palmas. This is a bank in Brazil. Has been created in 1989, and they combine credits, small microcredits, with local currencies. So they give microcredits in local currencies. Today there are 52 of such banks all over Brazil, and their basic idea is to say there is no poor region. It doesn't exist. If a region is poor, it just simply is the result of continuous outflow of money. And they say, okay, if you give a credit to someone this is of course in the favelas, it's not in the city center, they are in the favelas of Brazil, and they say if you give a credit to someone for consumption, you give them national currency, he will go to the city center and spend it there. But by this way, we force him to spend it locally, and it will continue circulating, and a lot of people from our area will benefit from it. And actually, it is a big success. They have even today they have become like a social center where people can meet and also find jobs, etc. So it's more than just a bank. So maybe to resume, traditional financial inclusion creates links to global economy and creates dependencies, whereas alternative currencies like regional currencies or Alex's system, etc., they create and strengthen links between local businesses, local actors, etc., and they promote an autonomous development. So, thank you. Do I have time for questions?
Okay, there is one.
Is it possible to do electronic payments in banking?
No, not yet. We're working on it.
And when you mentioned microfinance, is that something you're considering as well?
Excuse me?
Are you considering offering credits in banking for microfinance?
Yes, but it's difficult. I once was talking to the Raiffeisen Bank, and my hope was that they could just introduce this logic into their existing calculations. But in fact, they told me that it is much more complicated. There are a lot of legal questions around it. Is it real money, etc.? And they said that probably the fixed costs to get this all clear would be so high that we could never get the costs back from the credit. Otherwise, it would have been simple. And then the model I presented them was to say, okay, the business has too much Becky, they just bring it to you and you give it as a credit to someone who pays it back one by one in euros. Those euros you would give back to the company that brought the Becky. And the bank might take 3%, then the shop would, the business would still not lose 5%, but only 2%. So it might be interesting for anyone, but it's because of the fixed costs related to it that it's not being done. That's why I hope one day there will be many local currencies in Luxembourg, and they will do this calculation, and fixed costs will be shared. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll have Jean Lazare. We'll speak about the He's the founder of Surfcoin, which is a decarbonization cryptocurrency, which is something quite new.
So as you may have recognized from this opening slide, I will focus on a topic which hasn't come up too much until now, which I consider in a way to be the elephant in the room, the climate crisis which we are confronted with. What I contend is that when we discuss climate change, the climate crisis, there's often one factor in the economy which we overlook, and that is the role of money as we know it, to keep us in this, how should we call it? It's a quagmire. I think we are in a very bad place currently, and I think we should question the role of money in keeping us addicted to fossil fuels, and also in this economy which just continues to create inequality all over the globe. So the question I ask you is the time we question the link between money and fossil fuels? Money being understood as money as we know it, or fiat money, or conventional money, as you wish. So, first question is, how relevant is money as we know it to any discussion of climate change and its consequences? Remember that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago, the Stern report came out by Nicholas Stern from the UK, and there was discussion of how climate change would impact GDP. And so it was also expressed in $1 billion, how much the impact of climate change would be on GDP in billions or in percentage of GDP. What I would say is this really relevant? Because it might well be that if we take into account what climate change and its consequences mean, we're talking about something which might not be there when the climate change hits. One thing to remember about money is that it's, you recognize this photo, it's from the end of the 20s bank run. We tend to forget that a few things about money when we talk about it. We consider it mostly as a given. We put it more or less on the same level as physical laws. It's a given. We forget that it's something that we have built from scratch, we humans. So question, will dollars and euros be around 10 or 20 years from now? So it was created by us. It is dependent on a range of assumptions. The bank run is proof that it may be fragile. All of a sudden, this basis may flounder. It also depends on centralized infrastructure. Precisely the kind of thing that might evaporate if there is a serious crisis caused by climate impacts. This is taken from a recent publication by Total. So they balance dividend versus Brent, and here is their outlook. So for oil companies, it looks okay. They will be able to continue to offer even bigger dividends with the fluctuations of the oil price. So we have to pause here a moment and think, what does this mean? Because it means that we live in a world where money reflects an outdated view of value creation. Because if a company like Total, but ExxonMobil and Conoco and all of them are in the same logic, if we can consider that value creation will continue flowing with oil flowing from the wells, and gas being extracted by fracking and tar sands and so on. If this means that we're still creating value this way, there's something really, really wrong about how we consider value creation today. So the proposal here is to go to the bottom of what value creation is and admit that, for instance, extracting oil is not creating value today, it is destruction. So we have a very strong relationship to prices. How many decisions do we take every day which are based on price, a price structure or price for a product or a service? But there's zero reflection of how much carbon there is in a product or a service in the price. So it shows that the pricing mechanism, which is really at the heart of our economic system, is highly inefficient in reflecting what what value creation should be in a world which takes climate change seriously. Oh, something wrong. So it's not just that we don't know about the carbon content via the price signals we get. It goes further. It actually obstructs our efforts, which we might want to take as, let's say, citizens with some awareness of the problems we're facing. But these pricing mechanisms, they really make us blind, and they contribute not a small amount to perpetuate what I call the carbon-drenched status quo, which makes us turn around in circles with every transaction actually leading to further CO2 emissions, you could say. So another aspect which we tend to forget about the link between money and fossil fuels is we can't forget how extremely profitable this business has been. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that historically it's been the most profitable. So this is from 2018, and I think it's from Forbes. Somebody they calculated what the Saudi oil company represented, and they said it's the profit is Apple plus Google plus ExxonMobil, but it's a way to show that even today, when we know that we should phase out these fossil fuels, these companies remain highly profitable. So it's time to divest, but you know that it's not coming easy. It's a tough nut, isn't it? So money has another dimension, which is I contend that today it's the only belief shared by all of humanity. But that's You might consider it as something positive. It's at the basis of what globalization achieved, if you want to see it as a performance. But I think that the other way around, to really get things going in terms of climate action, we have to question this belief. So this is a joke. Vespasian, the Roman emperor, coined the phrase that money has no fragrance, and I say it has, and it's very oily in reality. So to summarize the findings. Money is everywhere. It's the only shared belief. Its core, it lies at the heart of our system, which is, as Naomi Klein calls it, extractivism. So another way to call capitalism, which points to the importance of relying on extracting resources. And as I've tried to demonstrate, it's not neutral vis-a-vis fossil fuels. So we hardly question money in the public discourse, even when we discuss how to address climate change. Money is always, it's given, we'll continue with it. And I dare say we should question it. So that's why I was very interested when, after the 2008 crisis, Bitcoin was launched. I would not say that it brought home the notion that with technology you can really start tools. You can launch tools that question the almighty status of conventional money, but Bitcoin itself does not really answer the question which I asked: can we invent money which will help us get out of the climate crisis because of the mining mechanism, which is very carbon intensive? We also have some structural problems with Bitcoin. We don't have the throughput which would allow us to make it a universal method of payment. Not yet. It may come, but we still have the carbon footprint of the mining mechanism, which isn't solved. We have Libra. Everybody has heard about Libra. I would really not like to count on Libra from a company like Facebook, which is kind of creepy when it comes to data management. I would like the idea that they would, in addition to all the data they have on my friends, on my life, that they also would know what I spend and when on what. So I don't think that's really where to go. But I still think that blockchain or digital ledger-based endeavors can help us find a solution. And so it will come as not much of a surprise that I am myself in the process of launching such a currency as an experiment to be launched as a pilot here in Luxembourg to see if we can bring about behavioral change and carbon footprint reduction. How much time do I have, Alex? 5? 5. Okay. So at this point, I think we can agree that we can't eat money, we can't drink oil. So what are we going to try? The currency which I am about to launch as a pilot in Luxembourg is called Surfcoin, which is an abbreviation of survival coin. And a few words about the concept. It's meant to be used alongside conventional money. or local money as well, to stimulate decarbonization at large. And I will also, if I have enough time at the end, I will also say a few words about why I think that it's an ideal complement to UBI. So a few words on how it works. The idea is to pinpoint via this SurfCoin what is value creation today. Value creation, I would say, is reducing our footprint. That's what's really bringing value creation into the world nowadays. And so if we, as users of the SurfCoin, agree that we are tending by our transactions to tend towards carbon neutrality, well, I would say we're on the right track. So how does it work? We reward people who reduce their footprint. They obtain SurfCoins. They spend them on products or services which themselves represent some contribution to decarbonization. We join initiatives. The fact that we have a wallet in which we see how much SurfCoin we've earned gives us a sense of how well we behave in terms of reducing our footprint. And there's also a gamification aspect, which is we can enter games with our peers as to who generates more SurfCoins, which means who reduces his footprint more or faster. So we have an app which is ready for deployment. We have a number of elements which have been defined with partners. For instance, we know that one SurfCoin will represent 140 grams of non-emitted CO2, because we want to create a parity between one SurfCoin and 1 kilometer. And 140 grams is what you emit on average when you use an ICE car. I'll jump to examples of how SurfCoin can work in mobility, carpooling apps. In Luxembourg, we have this Copilot app, which is meant to help people find car sharing partners. Same goes for bike sharing services, bike renting services, or biking apps. You can count the kilometers which have been biked and get a benefit for it, a reward. In electricity use, you can get SurfCoins when you reduce your consumption, or when you manage to displace your electricity consumption to periods of the day where a lot of renewable energy is available. This is the initial loop, which I hope we will be able to launch next month, which is based on those bikes which are used in 8 municipalities in the south of Luxembourg. And the idea is that there will be an interface between the SurfCoin platform and this VeloPay platform, so that you are able to earn a reward when you bike. The idea is to extend this then to locally grown vegetables, where you would get reward, or you will get reward based on the difference between the footprint of those vegetables compared to the footprint of those vegetables supermarket, which were produced using chemistry, mechanical agriculture, which drove all over Europe to get here, and which are wrapped in plastic and so on. So you calculate the difference, and the reward will be the delta. So a few words about how we are set up. Some funding from Œuvre Nationale de Secours Charlotte. Intech, a subsidiary of Post, which helps for the technical implementation, and the Luxembourg department of the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology helps to assess the decarbonization merit. So why do I think that Zerfone is a perfect complement for UBI? So I like this image here of the UBI. The question is, what do you see here? Is it a duck or is it a rabbit? This is to illustrate that UBI is used as a generic term, but as we've seen with Alfred, much depends on how you implement it, how you define it. But let's assume we have a kind of UBI which is introduced, which is compatible with the vision of Alfred. Then it makes very much sense to consider that rather than relying on transactions which are denominated in euros, we could stimulate decarbonization by focusing on transaction denominated in surf coins, because we would know that what we do above this UBI income would be helpful in terms of reducing the footprint. So thank you for your attention, and if there is some time left, Alex, thanks for the questions.
I propose to wait for questions from your drinks.
Okay.
Just a few minutes. Just bear with me. In a few minutes, there will be drinks. Very well. Great. So this is the last thing I'll be very quick. So I was hoping to present to you today the Modern Hunter-Gatherer Manifesto, and I'm not going to do it because I'm not finished. I'll just give you some ideas here. So what was it supposed to be? The idea is very simple. Okay, I think the issue, okay, that we need to change the whole economic paradigm for certain things to change in the world has been addressed directly and indirectly here. It's quite clear. Now, do you want this one here with me? Come together? Yeah. Thank you. Just a figure. So, Homo sapiens is, depending on how you measure it, but you could say that, it's about 1.8 million years, okay, since we became something that is close to what we are today. Not exactly the same, but something close. So we could say that for about 1.8 million years, we were hunter-gatherers, more or less. Agriculture came about 10,000 years ago. So if you think about that, the fact of living in a communal way, of cooperating, okay, of doing stuff together, is, I think you could claim that it's encoded in our genes. It's actually very funny. I was in a conference not so long ago talking to some ultra-liberal guys who are into privatize everything, everyone for himself, and absolutely. And then when they found out that there's others like them, they all congregate and buy beers to each other, for each other, and they're like, a crowd, and they're like, that's it. They create a little micro-society. Okay, it's natural. We are social animals. And despite the last 8,000 to 10,000 years, where we became much more egoistical, I would say, let's think back at our distant past. There is one very interesting idea that I first heard about in Amsterdam a few months ago, when David Graeber was speaking, together with his colleague, I forget his name. What we thought for a long time is that the advance in civilization, from hunter-gatherers through agriculture to cities, etc., that there was a natural development from, egalitarian societies to hierarchical, more and more hierarchical societies. This was I would say, it's almost like ideology. It's a belief that everyone, anthropologists also believe this. And apparently there is now evidence, which I've heard about, that this is not true. There is evidence of societies that are very hierarchical, that reverted to being egalitarian without losing their technology. Okay, and Graeber is working on such issues now. Do you remember what his?
I'll look it up.
Okay.
Sorry, could you just repeat it? I just didn't get it.
So, for a long time, anthropologists and everyone thought that as we get more civilized, our societies naturally become more hierarchical and less egalitarian. That this is some kind of fact and a rule, like a natural fact, that you couldn't change that. Okay? As we get more technologically advanced, more civilized, bigger cities, we have to be more hierarchical. And so what anthropologists are starting to see now is that this is not necessarily true. We start seeing evidence of societies that were quite developed and quite hierarchical, with a big temple in the middle and houses around, changing, and suddenly there's, for centuries there would be a city with houses all of the same size, the temple gone, but the technological advance still there. Okay, we can go back. That is the message. We can potentially go back, right, from being hierarchical to being, egalitarian, which means we might be able to go back from being, capitalist and everyone for himself and let's make the most money we can to maybe something else. There is hope. That's the idea. So, what this manifesto is not to say let's go back to being hunter-gatherers, but what can we learn from him? And maybe there's something to learn from him. So we know now it's not always the case that it always must be from egalitarian to hierarchical. In hunter-gatherer societies, there was an opt-out clause. The planet was, large for the smaller number of people, of humans in the world. And if someone didn't like it, they just took part of the band and they just did their own stuff, the opt-out clause. We don't have this anymore. It's not so easy. Okay, if you want to leave the society here, where do you go? It's not that easy. UBI provides a kind. It's not. I'm not saying UBI is an opt-out clause, but it's a kind of something a bit similar. Okay. Demand sharing means in a hunter-gatherer society, if your brother or your sister have something that you need, you go to her and say, I need this. And she must give it to you. I mean, it's normal, and unless she actually uses it. We can't do that. You can't go and say, oh, it's a nice car, I don't want to get it. Yeah. Let's face it, okay? But taxation can solve, that's kind of the parallel that we have to demand sharing among hunter-gatherers. They were very, very egalitarian. I call this, and some like it, they had very strong leadership resistance, okay? You get a little Hitler or guy saying, I'm the boss, again, everyone's going to start laughing and the guy's just going to go in the corner and cry. It doesn't work, okay? Right? And someone like Trump would be very, very, very unhappy in hunter-gatherer band. So we need to change. I mean, that's the hardest one. We need to change the culture, we need to change our education, we need to have people who think for themselves, who learn to think for themselves instead of voting for some stupid politician. They understood leisure. They worked, and this is something that's a bit easier to understand for us. Work is a means to an end. It's not a value as such. Okay, today it's true. Work defines us very often, but we should learn from these guys and from our long history. Sure, we need to live. We need work needs to be done, but it's a means to an end. The fact that hunter-gatherer societies understand that the world is, it's what sustains them. And I have this, I think, instinctive knowledge that, you go to a place, you don't take all the fruit and all the plants and everything you can get. You take enough for you and leave something for next and you move. It's a natural thing. So we need to also, I would say this for us is relearning long-term thinking. And actually also, once thinking of writing, so for this one draft, the way I was expressing this, we do not build cathedrals anymore. We need to start building cathedrals again. You know, cathedral is something where you start building it and you know that your grandchildren maybe are going to finish it, okay? Whereas this short-term thinking is destructive, okay? Once you start thinking long-term, you think about, you take a totally different perspective. And I think we can, even though probably the hunter-gatherers didn't think like that, we can reinterpret this today in that way. Well, there was something about communal living. I think that could be useful. I think it would be useful for Alex Holland. Is, you know, we have forgotten about communal living. Doesn't mean we need to go now together and live in bands of 50 people, 100 people all together. But there are some things we can do in our architecture, in our urban planning, because we know that being together is good for us. We're very, very social. And having these very, you know, even the layout of places that we live in is, maybe there are such things that we can change. So yes, I'm hopefully publishing this thing at some stage. Any?
You can ask.
Sorry? Oh yes, it was done quickly. Thank you. That was it. And now for drinks, for the coffees.
Thank you very much, Alex.
All right, so it concludes it, and thank you very much for coming. I thank you again to the speakers, the co-organizers. Yeah, it was very uplifting. Thank you.